I'm Marie Vigouroux.
I'm Jeremy Greer.
And this is Rude Eats, a delicious podcast where we sink our teeth into every episode of the show Hannibal.
I want Will Graham, I really do. And I think that we could have some fun. Then you can do anything you like. I might even go and help you catch the shrike. I want Will Graham, I want that man. For every meal and on demand. His mind shines and his body's cut. I know that he works for the FBI, but what other man has pure empathy and the ability to see my mind? Jack, what other thing have I ever asked you for? Besides, never looking into my pantry? And I won't get that either. Damn. I want Will Graham, I want him so. And he really doesn't need to know what's in my meals or on my mind. I just want Will Graham to be mine. I want him and I want him now. I said before, I don't care how. I'll give him tests, he'll draw a clock. And then his dark desires I will unlock. We'll be together, Will and me. We'll throw some grand dinner parties. We'll cut the flesh, we'll cook the meat. He'll eat the brew just like me. Give me goddamn Will Graham.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
This feels so weird to say. So weird.
It's 89 degrees outside in Louisiana and at the beginning of October. But Merry Christmas, everybody. Hope you're
Merry Christmas.
Hope you're having a good Christmas weekend.
Exactly.
We're glad to be here. Obviously, we're a little bit ahead, so we're having a little fun with this. But yeah, we're back, and Mary, things are not looking good for Will. I don't know if you.
Oh, I think that this episode, I think that the show is finally getting to me, to be honest with you. I have started having Hannibal themed nightmares.
Oh no. Tell me as much as you are comfortable with, because I need more details, but also I know sometimes speaking something brings it into the world. So I know if you don't want to summon Freddy, that's fine.
No, it's actually, you know what? I have a very specific relationship with nightmares because I part of my lifelong post-traumatic stress disorder is nightmares. And so I know that when something really gets to me, I will 100% have nightmares about it. And I am currently having nightmares about Hannibal, where I see Mads Mikkelsen's face so clearly in front of me. And it's the weirdest thing. A lot of my nightmares tend to happen in a really distorted version of my school that I went to when I was younger. And so, of course, it's happening in there. And the one that I had the other night was I was Will Graham, right? I wasn't me, I was Will Graham. And I was falling in love with Hannibal, but I knew that I shouldn't be falling in love with Hannibal. And I saw Hannibal killing somebody and stuffing their body in a trunk. And I'm being very honest with you. I'm just telling you what happened.
Yeah,
just
I'm
so
listening.
that
All ears.
Because I'm wondering also if that has anything to do with the show itself. Because I'm maybe my mind is seeing patterns that my conscious mind isn't accepting yet.
Oh no!
And so
now we're going to do a lucid dream podcast about that. That's going to be our feedback episode.
Imagine. So Hannibal stuffed this person's body in a trunk somewhere, and I saw it happen, and I was like, well, we got to tell somebody. And then I was so afraid that Hannibal was going to kill me if I said anything that I kept quiet. So then I tried to help him cover up the murder.
Oh, excellent. Good. Are you sure you weren't Abigail in this dream? Because it sounds like you were Abigail.
I know. Maybe there was a mix of everything,
Sure.
going from Abigail to anyway. And then when people were about to find out the shame of what I had done, really dawned on me. And all of this is happening while I'm also falling in love with this murderer, right? And it's just Anyway, there you go. So these are the kinds of dreams that I've been having because of this silly show.
And if you want to know the ending to that, you need to go to archiveofourown.com/user/rude-eats.
Imagine. Oh my God, it's true. That's actually a really good premise for
it's a good setup. Yeah.
It's a great setup. If anybody wants to write it, go ahead. Write out my nightmares,
Hannibal.
why don't you? Yeah. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. I forgot to put this in the notes, but we're getting close to the end of the season.
Yes.
And Mary and I both have individual podcasts where we do this, where we cover TV shows. And at the end of the season, we usually do some sort of feedback episode. So if you are interested in us reading your commentary about any episode from season 1, the entirety of season 1, Hannibal and Will as characters, go ahead and send those to us. You can hit us on Twitter at Rude Eats. Our email address is something@gmail.com, right? Rude Eats, the podcast. I don't even remember what our Gmail is anymore.
Like that. I can't remember. But if you go to rudeeats.cool, you should be able, or like, you know, we have a link tree where everything is linked.
Yeah.
Like everything should be there.
Yeah. So
if you're listening to this, you know how to get to it, right?
Yeah.
Like, so there you
leave
go.
Leave a comment on Spotify and like just put for the feedback episode, and I'll screenshot it and make sure it's there. So.
Also, Jeremy, like, isn't this like too late to be doing this? Won't we have recorded?
I have no idea.
The feedback
I
episode.
don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, you're absolutely right. If it is too late, apologies, and we'll be there for season 2. Everybody, at the end of season 2, catch us in 26 weeks when we get to the end,
God.
which will be like for me and Mary probably next month because we're breezing through Hannibal because we cannot stop watching. So yeah, this episode is pretty intense. Do you want to tell everyone which episode we're recording on today?
Absolutely. So this week we are covering Hannibal season 1, episode 11, Rôti, where Dr. Abel Gideon escapes from custody and begins targeting the psychiatrists who attempted to treat him, displaying their bodies with a Colombian necktie. While Ilana Bloom is under protective custody, Gideon kidnaps Dr. Frederick Chilton and lures Freddie Lowndes into a trap, forcing her to write an article about him. Meanwhile, Graham's undiagnosed encephalitis, I don't know that it's really undiagnosed, but whatever, drives his temperature up, causing severe hallucinations.
His secret encephalitis, I think, would probably be better.
His hidden encephalitis. This episode was directed by Guillermo Navarro, written by Steve Lightfoot, and it originally aired on June 6th, 2013.
So, we're going to rely on you because you're the French person on the podcast, so you know everything that is French. Can you tell the listeners what a rôti is?
Yeah, of course. So, like, I have heard the word rôti in different contexts, right? And the main one we'll get to at the end. But I've heard it at like Caribbean restaurants to describe like a very specific kind of flatbread. I've also heard it to refer to a dish that's made with this flatbread, where you put like some kind of slow cooked meat inside of it and roll it up like burrito style. Delicious, by the way. If you ever go to a Caribbean restaurant and they have rôti on the menu, you absolutely should be ordering that. Also, in Québécois French, rôti can refer to toast, like just regular toasted bread.
Just
which is
normal toasted bread.
Normal toasted bread, which is kind of funny. And so if we continue with like French gastronomy, which we have so far, and which is what the show is kind of like done so far, right? Our rôti is quite literally like a roast. So like a roasted piece of meat, which now I'm like, oh, with his high temperature, maybe Will is the rôti.
I was going to bring that up after you finished talking about this. Yeah, that's
I just had that realization as I was talking. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, Will fits this very well. So.
Oh, my poor love. Okay, so like I mentioned, one thing that's kind of common with all of these different meanings is like the cooking at high heat, right? So whether it's like the flatbread, the toast, or the roast, they all have like really high heat applied to it in order to like cook the way that it's supposed to. And this episode definitely brings on the heat, right? Like, so, so to speak. Whether it's through Will's temperature or through like what we're going to talk about in a second. And because that's the thing, like when I'm thinking about like bringing on the heat, I'm thinking about pressure, right? So like this idea of like applying pressure to force a transformation, which also kind of reminds me of like our œuf and fromage episode themes, right? Which makes me really feral, Jeremy, because like this was all like they told us so clearly what was going to happen, and like anyway, I'm feral. I need to go back and rewatch.
It's a lot because I can tell you, rewatching the show is so much fun because you pick up on so many clues. It definitely has that feeling where everything was planned and hinted at. And as we barrel towards the end game of season 1, it's amazing because knowing what's coming and seeing how deftly everything is being set up is just really, really impressive. So it's a lot of fun. I love this theme of pressure. And applying high heat to something over time, almost like a pressure cooker, because that's what this episode feels like. That like all of our characters are in the stew and we're cranking the heat up because everybody is a little stressed. Like Will is obviously stressed because of his hidden encephalitis, and that's literally being at a high temperature. Jack Crawford is more and more stressed about catching both Gideon in this episode as well as the Chesapeake Ripper, and also figuring out what's going on with Will. Even Hannibal, who is usually like the coolest of cool cucumbers, right? Like he has to go out of his way to murder somebody in order to address this pest in Gideon pretending to be the Chesapeake Ripper.
He goes from a cool cucumber to a fried pickle.
There you go.
Like, it's just poor baby.
It's interesting what makes Hannibal mad and how he expresses it, and we'll definitely talk about that throughout this episode.
Right?
I think
the facial expressions in this episode,
so subtle. So subtle. And then, of course, Gideon,
I love him.
Who is basically having almost an identity disorder at this point, who literally says during this episode, like, I don't even know how much of myself is left. I don't know who myself is. Obviously, like the pressure on him to figure that out and to reach out to the Chesapeake Ripper just to confirm that he isn't is pretty nuts. So I think the theme works very well throughout. And it almost makes me think that these writers are pretty smart to start to name these things the way they are. And in the second season, we've talked about this before. The second season is going to be very difficult on us. I think we're going to have to buy a book on Japanese cuisine so that we can really dig in. And then the third season switches to Italian cuisine, which I think we'll be back in our wheelhouses at that point.
Yes, exactly. I know that there are 2 episodes left to this season, right? Like there's 13 in total.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then I know that there's 2 more seasons, and I'm like, I don't even understand what they're going to be doing. I'm like, this is so much. Oh my God. But yeah, I'm so excited. And yes, I'm having nightmares and whatnot, but like, that's just a symptom of something else. But I am like, this is so good. Like, anyway, I cannot wait to get into it because
I almost asked you this in the outtakes, but it's been a trend where pretty much immediately after we're recording an episode, you go to watch the next one, and I'm curious if like you've booked your Sunday to like, oh, I got this person out of the house, I'm all by myself, I'm gonna go right into Hannibal as soon as we finish recording.
Honestly, kind of. I have to go for my run first, and watching Hannibal will be my reward for running 7 kilometers. So there you go.
There you go. Excellent.
Yeah, exactly. Watching episode 12, which I'll probably be like, I want to watch 13.
Oh, now! It's going to be so hard. It's going to be so hard. I can't even.
Yeah, I figure.
I can't even. It's going to be difficult for me too, right? Like I'm just.
Oh wow! And I feel like I've been like a really good, like a good sport about this because like how quickly I can go through series, and I have been like so good at not getting ahead.
Yeah, but in the meantime, I feel like in between, like you've had to reach to other outlets because haven't you binged like like 3 other shows in its entirety in between watching Hannibal? Like, yes, you have been good. Yes, you have been good. It's
I need the reassurance.
It's been really fun. From the outset, I knew this was going to be fun. I was a little worried about the gore after you told me like your kind of distaste for body horror, but that hasn't even really been an issue. I
mean, it wasn't this episode actually, and I'll talk about it. But like this episode really got me. I was like, I had to hide a part of the screen because I was like, I can't watch this. It's too disgusting.
But I am so excited just to get your like raw feelings about the things that are going to happen at the end of season 1. Wow. It's going to be so much fun.
To be clear, also, I think my goal before the feedback episode is going to be to rewatch season 1 as a whole, like, and binge it with like to my little heart's content, right? Just to like watch it, like take the day and just like watch Hannibal, and just to kind of like really soak in it, because that's kind of the thing. The reason why I watch shows the ways that I do is so that I can really like soak in them, and then like the repetition of watching it like a couple times is just like allows me to see different things at different times also. And so before the feedback episode, I'm going to be doing that.
Excellent.
For sure.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I might go back and listen to all of our podcasts. I haven't actually did a full listen to any one of our episodes at all.
That's a much bigger endeavor than rewatching
it's a
the
lot.
show,
It's actually a lot
like
more time.
Yeah,
it's twice
so
as
much
long.
More time. More than that, because our episodes are like 2 hours.
So I'll skip the outtakes.
Okay, good.
But I'm curious because, and listeners, if you guys want to do this, tell me. I would much rather not do this, but I'm curious about going back and listening to some of your predictions and how well some of this stuff is going to line up. Because you've done a very good job of correctly analyzing the show in a lot of ways. I know it sounds like we're on the finale for some reason. I don't know why we're talking about this. It's episode 11. Like, I don't know what's going on.
But I think it's because like it's so clear that we're getting to something at this point, right? Like there is so much pressure. Like we are clearly we're close to the climax of the story,
Absolutely,
right? Like it has to be, and that's why I'm like, I don't even understand how there's technically like a whole hour and a half left to all of this, because what more can they do?
They can fix Will. They can fix. That's what's going to happen. I'm spoiling it for you right now.
I don't believe you.
He's all going to be fine. He's good.
Your voice is so high. I don't believe you. It's like Ross and Friends. I'm fine.
Totally fine. Like, totally fine.
I'm fine.
All of that said, do you want to go into our Beat by Eat section?
Yes, please.
We're going to start at Hannibal's house. He is serving dinner to Dr. Chilton as they discuss Dr. Gideon. Just to catch listeners up, Gideon is a patient of Dr. Chilton's. He killed his wife, and that Dr. Chilton is now in this conversation confessing to psychically driving so that Gideon believed he was the Chesapeake Ripper. And Hannibal and him are discussing this rather frankly, which is new because up to this point, Chilton has denied Alana Bloom's claims that he did this, and
very strongly, right? Like he was very adamant that he did not do that. But Hannibal kind of created like that opening in the last episode where he was in about like, oh, that's what I would have done too,
Hannibal loves to give openings to people to do bad things. Like that's like he just like, yeah, let me see the worst part of you. Let me see it. Let me take it out. Let me see it.
Blood. It's like that True Blood line, like I want to do bad things with you. Like that's exactly Hannibal.
Absolutely.
Like that is who he is.
Right. Maybe that should be our theme for next season.
Oh, no. We have oh my God. Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited to talk about that eventually.
Chilton says something here where he says, if only I had been more curious about the normal mind. And Hannibal kind of dismisses this, and he's like, I have no interest in sheep, only eating them. And then serves, of course, a South Indian curry with sheep in it. So.
Of course. And now, as you say this, like the thing about the normal mind is actually going to come back at the very end of the episode. And I hope that I remember to comment on that. Because it's so funny to me, all of the parallels that are happening in this episode, particularly between like Chilton and Gideon and Hannibal and Will. And here, like Chilton is basically saying that like, oh, if only I had been more curious about the normal mind.
Yes.
And we will get back to it at the end. And what I find really interesting here, though, is that he actually starts the conversation with like someone who already doubts their identity. And that's Hannibal that says that. Someone who already doubts their identity can be more susceptible to manipulation, which like makes me want to go back and rewatch the earlier episodes to see like how Hannibal has encouraged Will to doubt his own identity from the beginning, right? To get him to this point.
And this was something I brought up in the last episode where there's a lot of dialogue of the way that Hannibal asks Will's questions that that makes a connection in Will's mind between his ongoing, stress and duress with the mind of a killer.
Yes.
Like there's yes. so many examples of that, and I feel like that feeds into like this, right? He's making Will doubt his own identity by trying to make him believe he's some sort of killer. And yeah, it's there's a lot of examples.
Oh I'm gonna be pointing out the ones that I saw in this episode. I'm sure that there's more, but like on a first watch, like those are the ones that I saw, and yes, so good.
Chilton has been formally accused of psychically driving Gideon to kill, and asked what Hannibal would do in a situation. And this isn't like particularly clear, but what's happening is Gideon has been made aware that Chilton was manipulating him and is now putting him into and now suing him for basically causing him to kill the nurse. And that's not really laid out, and I'm glad it's not. It's just kind of hinted at. But just to be clear, that's what Chilton is worried about. And he asks Hannibal, like, what would you do? And Hannibal says, I would deny everything, of course.
And like, okay, for real though, like, is that really Hannibal's real advice, or is he just like fucking with Chilton? Because like until now, I don't think that I have seen him like deny anything, right? Like when Will asks him questions, like he answers truthfully, and it's often a very cherry-picked truth, right? But he's never really denied anything. So it just kind of makes me wonder how he's going to react when Will, I think, inevitably is going to find out what's happening with him. But I'm not sure that he's going to deny anything at all. I feel like he's just going to gaslight him into thinking that like he did it for his own good or something twisted like that,
I think you're absolutely right in that this wouldn't be Hannibal's advice for Will or the way he would interact with Will. But I think on him telling Chilton, like, deny everything, it being this a legal case, basically. He's just like, don't say a fucking word. And I think that's like the legit advice from Hannibal.
Keep your mouth shut is always great advice.
Yeah. You don't have to answer the police questions. You don't.
You shouldn't.
Just because you've done nothing wrong doesn't mean you need a lawyer. Get a lawyer. Get a lawyer before you talk to the police.
Always.
Even if it's Mulder and Scully showing up on your door, get a lawyer, because that's probably going to be even worse for you.
Imagine. And in that moment, Chilton says that it kind of feels like a last supper, right? Like he is clearly feeling the pressure of like having to face the consequences of his own goddamn actions.
And Hannibal points out that Chilton failed in his psychic driving because he was trying too hard. And he kind of let on the game, right? Like he let slip the game. So he was playing this like manipulation game with Gideon, and Gideon found out about it. And as soon as someone finds out that you're trying to psychically manipulate them, it becomes that much harder. And Hannibal has a line here where he says, the subject must be unaware of any influence. And it's really hard not to think of Will Graham when he says that. Like,
right. And
then, of course, we cut directly to Will.
Exactly. There you go. Which is just like so funny. Like this show is not particularly subtle. I don't think, especially when you know what's actually happening. But when you don't, you're like, oh, whatever. So now that's why I'm like, I want to go back and rewatch like so badly. And I'm holding myself back because I don't want to do that yet. But I'm like, I can't wait to go back and just like binge it.
We cut to Will, who's dreaming. He's on the beach where they found the corpse totem a couple episodes ago. In the distance, he sees a glacier and he sees ice falling off of it. Will is often coated blue, where Hannibal is coated red. And this is obviously very, very blue for Will and Will's kind of fascination with water and his obsession with it. And we see like the corpse totem, and we see the ocean pull back from the beach and then form into a huge wave that's coming and crashing down, threatening to wash away him completely. And yeah, that's Will's going through some rough times.
I mean, like, that's just such a wonderful visual representation of the danger that he's in, right? And I think, like, I'm just amazed at how much, like, in his dreams, he's seeing things that are actually, like, very, very important information that he should be taking very, very seriously.
Yeah, it's. I want you to make note of that because it's something that, I like. When we talk about Will's like ability to empathize, right?
Yeah.
Like if you think about the way that he came to the conclusion that Abigail was a killer, the show presents this, and Jack underlines like, "Oh, you take the evidence and you come to a conclusion." But a lot of times he's just feeling with his gut, and it's his gut and his brain, which is on fire, sending these crazy ass visions to him that are absolutely important.
Yeah, there you go. And like it allows him to see certain patterns that he would otherwise not see. And it's funny, I'm so sorry, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but like I've been because I've been needing a little bit of comfort TV after all of this, so I've been watching like just random X-Files episodes, and I'm like, how similar? What?
You're the cliche of yourself at this point. You've been watching random X-Files episodes, girl.
I know. It's just some of them are so good. They're like so comforting now, and I'm just amazed at how much Mulder and Will are similar in that way, right?
Yeah.
Like. Now I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, that's something that Will could have said. Oh, that's something that Will could have said. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Where is the crossover episode is what everybody's asking.
Oh, man. So good.
If Warehouse 13 can cross over with Eureka, and if New Girl can cross over with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, then surely Hannibal can cross over with the X-Files.
Absolutely.
Will awakes in his bed. He's sweaty. He's drenched in sweat. He's delirious. The clock says 8:19 p.m. and as he watches, the numbers literally melt away like they were water. And his bed fills with not just water, but steaming water, as if the water is literally being boiled away as it touches him. And he feels these waves crash down on him, and he begins to thrash on the bed. And finally, he just turns to water himself, just completely disappearing. Again, when we talk about identity or pressure, here's him literally being erased in his own dreams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being like completely absorbed into like what was so dangerous to him just moments before, right? Like, which is, oh my God. Which again, like if we go back to my dream, my nightmare is kind of similar to that, right? Like being completely absorbed, right?
Maybe I'm psychically driving you to like Hannibal.
Oh my God. Okay. As someone who has nightmares, waking up from a dream when you are still dreaming, or like dreaming that you're waking up from a dream, is truly the worst feeling. So like absolutely awful. And also, like, are we not going to talk about the fact that, like, it is 8:19 p.m.?
My boy is so tired. He's got grandpa hours.
Right? Like, it means he is sick. He's sick. He needs a doctor. And, like, get him to the hospital.
And not even going to bed at 8:19 p.m., but, like, having already entered REM sleep, right? Dog's chilled out. Exactly. Like, he's not brushing his teeth at 8:19. He has been in bed for a while. My dude is tired. My dude is having a hard time being a person right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think we're like, that's such a small detail, but like, oh my God, right? Like, it's just because imagine the rest of his night now.
Yes,
like that's just gonna go on. Like you don't don't have these kinds of dreams and then go back to sleep peacefully. Like,
got to change those sheets first and foremost. Yeah. Like that's gonna be a nightmare situation for you. We cut over to Dr. Gideon, who is at the Baltimore Institute for the Criminally Insane, BICI.
Yes.
That what it is? Okay. He's being loaded in a van to be brought
BC.
BC, yeah, being brought to court. And as he's there, Chilton is there. Gideon is wearing, just prison stuff basically, and he kind of tells Chilton like it's not fair that you get to dress up because Chilton is looking his normal his
fancy self,
almost tailored suit kind of situation. And
right.
He accuses Chilton of making him kill the nurse in a few episodes, and that's why he's suing him. And he says, you told me that I was the Chesapeake Ripper. And Dr. Chilton says, Dr. Gideon, you told me you were the Chesapeake Ripper, which is just a shitty thing to say because he knows he did it wrong. He knows what he did. Right.
And that's the thing, like, it's the gaslighting of it all, right? But also, they're flirting, right? Like, they're 100%. Am I seeing this? Like, they are flirting because, like, Chilton then goes, I'll see you at trial. And it's like, oh my God, what is happening? Like, this, I've seen this before in fics, like, yes. 100%. And again, like,
there's only one bed at the courthouse.
There's...
It's a joke that's never going to get old for me. You know how you can have what's the Chekhov's gun?
Yes.
We need a phrase for there's the something bed, right? Like, because I just think that's like the best like thing to put in any other situation.
Bed, I guess.
Yeah, it's the Destiel bed, exactly.
It's the Destiel bed. Or did that start with like MSR? Because that's probably that started too.
Excellent question. Absolutely.
There was only one bed in the motel room,
I bet honestly, like considering fanfic started like back in the 60s with like Star Trek, like I'm sure that like there was only one bed in the hollow room or some shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's only one bed in the holodeck.
There was only one bed in the pod bay or something. If you know the origin of that trope, please tell us. I want to know. I definitely want to know. But you mentioned that Chilton is in his like tailored suit, right? And I'm like, who else have we seen in tailored clothes? And I'm just like, this is clearly a parallel between Hannibal and Will. Like, it has to be.
Yes, you mentioned it before, but this is definitely a reflection, I think, of what is happening with Hannibal and Will. They light Gideon up. They get on the road. Gideon makes small talk to the nurse and guards, asks them about their personal lives, which they don't respond to. He says that maybe he's just the type of guy who's not supposed to be in a relationship. Right. And then he asks the nurse, "How do you keep your I can't remember your coat, your shirt so white? His nurse's uniform is white, so white." And then it fades out, and we see like blood soaking through this white fabric, and it goes into our intro. So we know some shit has gone down.
Oh yeah.
And after the intro, we see Will. Now we see the van in the background, and we're at obviously a police investigation. There's police everywhere. He starts doing the pendulum thing. I found out by reading the script that the sound that this makes in the script is FWUP. Whoop, whoop, whoop. It's always very funny to me, like having read a bunch of comic books where they have these crazy like sounds that they have to spell out for when like, Thor hits the Hulk or something. It's always something like vroom, or something weird. So hey, seeing that in like a script was very funny. And the typical thing happens. The pendulum begins to wipe out everything that's there in reality. And as everybody is gone, Will backs into the van and he sits down where Gideon was. And then he's in that situation where Gideon was in the back. And we see this guard and this nurse. And Will says, "All I need is one hand free." And he breaks his thumb so that he can slide the cuffs over and begins to fight with both the nurse and the guard, fighting them off. And this is one of those like TV show things where I just don't think that one dude, Gideon or Will, could take two guys like this, but whatever. Like there's a moment where Will is like strangling a guy with his feet, and I'm like, "Are you the Black Widow? What are you?" Natasha, is that you in disguise?
Right, but that's the whole thing, right? Like I was watching this and I'm like, I'm so glad that we're not looking at this for like a realistic lens.
Yeah, exactly.
Because like that was just like, where would Gideon have learned to fight like this? Like it doesn't make sense. But it's very cool. And so I will forgive it. I'm like, that's very badass of Dr. Gideon. Like very cool.
And he cuts the nurse's throat, I think, with the cuffs, which is just fucking brutal. Yeah. And then there is not a lot on this earth that I like more than Will getting into like a cat-like stance as the van pulls over, and like obviously the driver is going to open the back door, and he literally like hunkers down with his hands like outstretched in front of him, like he has fucking claws or some shit. Like he is like about to pounce. It's so good and funny, and he's in the moment. Like this is not a funny thing. Like he is like fully into it, and we see like we don't see the door open, but we hear the door open, and he jumps, and that's when the scene cuts. But
he like yeets himself out.
He does.
Like he jumps like head first to this driver. Like it's so. It's really comical when we describe it, but it's really not. It's absolutely terrifying when you're watching it.
Yes, 100%. Will opens his eyes and he's back in reality. I like this shot a whole lot because we see Will and he's off center in the frame and kind of over his shoulder, almost like an angel or a devil, if you will. Like here comes Jack Crawford to talk.
Of course.
And it's an interesting framing device. And there's nothing very specific to that. If we consider everybody that's been whispering in Will's ear about him and who he is and how he works and things like that, like Jack is definitely one of those people on his shoulder kind of whispering some stuff to make him believe that he's a certain way. He also wonders if Gideon still believes that he's the Ripper, and Will says that Dr. Gideon is having a difference of opinion on who he is.
And it's so funny because I know that we talked about the theme of identity 2 weeks ago. And I'm just like, this is like the second time that we have a theme that like works perfectly with the story that they're in the process of telling. And I'm just like, we're really good. Like we're good at this, We get a good grade in podcasting.
Yes, absolutely. Somebody rate and review us and tell us how good of a job we're doing. Because we know, but hearing you say it means even more. That's what we want.
Exactly.
Also at the crime scene, Gideon has taken out the organs from the bodies, and he has strung them up in the trees, almost like Christmas decorations. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
And he's even strung them up with arteries, and in some cases, like tied bows. And this is obviously like something that the Ripper would not do.
And the ERT team is like having such a blast. Like they're like, he even tied some bows on some of them. Like the giddiness with which they're describing this is so funny to me.
Well, it's got to be so much better than like an average murder, right? Like a guy gets shot in the heat of the moment or something, and they have to like, here's the entrance hole and here's the exit hole. Like I'm sure like organs tied up in trees has got to be fun
with bows. With bows.
I don't know. Did you put the ramen emoji right here?
Yes.
Is that? Did you do that? I don't remember doing that.
I did that.
Okay. That's weird.
Well, because what does the sentence say, Jeremy?
I don't know. I was going to ask you. I was curious. Because
the sentence says, Will points out the Ripper wouldn't leave the organs behind, and so I put soup, because that's what he would make with the organs. He eats them.
It's hilarious. It's absolutely
he would have kept
hilarious.
them for a nice warm Christmas meal, right?
That's never even occurred to me to put emojis in our notes. Now we're going to go crazy.
Oh no, what have I done?
You've opened up a door.
I've psychic driven you to put emojis.
You've opened up a door. Now everything is going to come through.
Okay. I'm way too... Like, I'm laughing way too hard at this episode for like the theme.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're having too good of a time, but we're gonna get into the real shit later.
Okay. Whew. Okay.
So there's some police stuff. Gideon has stole a bunch of police supplies. Their tracks tell him that he's headed back to Baltimore, presumably to kill someone and maybe attract the Ripper's attention.
Yeah, honestly, like when I was watching this the first time, when I was watching this, I was just like, I figured immediately that he was going back to kill Chilton. Like it wasn't even, I didn't even think that he had it out for the people that he has it out for, but I was just like, oh, he's going back for Chilton.
And we cut to Chilton. Will and Alana are now at Chilton's office, and he's on the defensive, thinking that they're like going to accuse him of somehow orchestrating this release. He's just kind of shifty, and he tries to shift the blame from himself to Alana, saying that, it's your fault that the nurse died because you led him on to believe that I was psychically driving him, which is kind of one of those things of like a you made me do it situation, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Not at all. Yeah.
And then he also says something I think that's kind of interesting, that's saying that Gideon wasn't crazy when he killed his wife, but that act drove him crazy, like he disassociated. And then Will is like, look, Gideon is not the Chesapeake Ripper, although he may have believed he was under your care. There's moments where Will, when he speaks, when he's angry, where he literally like bites off the words that he's saying. And this is one of those moments. Like, he is really, really angry at Chilton for what he did.
He is so upset. Like, and again, like, I think that this doesn't really bode well for Hannibal when Will realizes eventually what's been going on there, right? Like, I'm just like, ooh, he's going to be real mad. I'm also kind of surprised at how like petulant Chilton seems here, because like you said, he's trying to shift the blame and doing this and doing that, like, which I guess is like a normal reaction for some people when they're feeling like the pressure mounting on them, right? But like, I didn't get that kind of vibe from him from the first episode that we saw him in. Like, here there's just a lot of like, or it seems like he's lost all the pretense of like trying to appear like a professional, because in the first episode that we saw him in, like, that was, he wanted to make himself seem superior to all of these other people in the room. Like, he wanted to be the smartest one in the room, which, you know, I didn't love, but like, that was his character. Here he's just like so entitled and like just so hateable. I know that you love him, but I'm just like, like, I just like him so much.
So it's interesting that you say I love him, because I like, and you mentioned this the other day too, that I had some affection for Dr. Chilton, and it made me kind of analyze what I had said about him to make you believe that, to make you think that, because it's one of those things where like, I don't like Dr. Chilton as a person, but I really like him as a character.
Yes, absolutely.
None of the stuff that he does, I think like having this kind of mid-level psychiatrist to compare and contrast to like Will's like feral like natural auteur and Hannibal's like incredibly educated, studied, degree, you know, kind of having that in between the two of them, I think is really interesting. Chilton as a character is somebody that is, you know, he exists in the books and the movies and all those kind of things, and it's just, he's just a fascinating character, and he's a fascinating part of this world. And none of this stuff with Gideon or anything really comes out in the books. But there's aspects of this story that they've pulled from, and I really like this a whole lot, where he's caught in the middle, having been caught psychically driving, but he's, you know, not doing it as good as Hannibal does it.
I think it is really interesting actually to have him there. Like, I also love the character. I think that he serves like such a good purpose to compare and contrast. Because the reality is also that, like, I feel like a lot of medical professionals would react in a similar way, like in order to keep their license, even though they know that they've done something wrong, right? And I think that that's just like a human thing, like, and it's not a pretty part of human beings, but it's just a normal part of being a human being.
Yes, yeah. CYA, right? That's the number one priority. Alana points out that none of this really matters, because whoever psychically drove him to kill whatever, he's going to kill again. And Will is getting like worse and worse during this conversation. You can tell he just doesn't want to be here. And he kind of shuts them both up as like Chilton and Alana begin to actually yell at one another in this environment.
Yeah. And he does this thing, right, where like he grabs Alana's arm, and it happens at a moment where I think that if you're in the room with him, you could totally think that he's doing that to like hold her back from saying more or from yelling more. But like, knowing what we know about what's going on in Will's head, like, I saw that as like him grabbing her for like emotional balance, for solid ground, I think is what was said in a previous episode.
What Jack said, right? I am bedrock or whatever.
Yes, exactly.
And his need for balance. Absolutely, I agree with you. We go back to FBI HQ. Jack is holding a meeting with a large police force. Obviously, this is a manhunt operation to find Gideon. Will is at the back, and he's very much struggling. So the preview, the little intro for the episode said that the encephalitis was driving him to intense hallucinations, and it happens here, where he begins to sweat, and as he watched Jack, all of a sudden the entire room is filled with antlers, and Jack is talking directly to him. And he's repeating things that Jack in the reality was saying to this police force about how he was institutionalized at the Baltimore home for the criminally insane, and what kind of crazy are you? And these things, obviously, as he's talking, like, Will is hearing this stuff, but this is all a hallucination. But he thinks that Jack is coming for him, right? Like, and again, we talk about pressure. Like, he feels like he's not able to hide this from Jack, and Jack is going to literally put him where Gideon is. And remember, like, the first time we went to visit Gideon, to visit Gideon when he meets Chilton, Will was like, I'm a little worried about going to these places because, I'm worried they won't let me out again.
Which is something that Mulder actually says word for word in one of the X-Files episodes. I'm just saying.
So funny, yeah.
Yes.
I can't wait to get that one.
There you go. But you're absolutely right. Like, Will is hearing those things like, he will kill again, as like, you will kill again. Like, he is armed and extremely dangerous, as like, you are armed and extremely dangerous. And it's like, Will in his mind is already making the connection between himself and Gideon, right? And so what he knows about Gideon is telling him somehow that he is similar to Gideon. And it's, this show is so good.
Will returns to reality. And as he looks over, Jack is talking to some other police officers, and they kind of share a look. And it's just obvious that Will is so just physically unwell that I just want somebody to take care of him. Please.
Again, it's me like just screaming, take him to a hospital.
Instead, he goes to Hannibal, and he begins to tell Hannibal what he saw at this with all of the antlers. And some of the sentences here that he's saying are just so heartbreaking to hear. Like, all I heard was my heart, like footsteps fleeing into silence. I feel like I have been gradually becoming different for a while. I love that. I love that sentence a lot. I feel like I've gradually becoming something different, because me and Autumn have a joke that, like, you never hear about a good becoming. Like, there's nobody that's ever gone through a becoming that wanted to like just be chill about it. Like, it's always serial killers or something. And so I've been gradually becoming different for a while. And then it also says like that he feels literally crazy and fears that he can't figure out who he is, just like Gideon. And he's, as describing Gideon, he says, it's like someone got into his head and moved all the furniture around, which,
Like, he knows, like, his part of his subconscious knows what's going on. And I will continue saying this. And that part of his subconscious is trying to tell him what's going on. This is very Freudian, and I'm not usually like psychoanalyst. Like, I don't love psychoanalysis, but like, this is clearly told through that lens. And I'm just like, he knows, he just hasn't realized yet, kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. And Hannibal kind of is trying to bring Will back to reality. And he says something that's very reminiscent of what Jack said in the previous episode. He says, I can be your gauge to reality. Just like Jack was like, I am your bedrock. And Alana was like, you're too crazy for me. Like, there's a lot of people like just like not either helping or not helping Will out.
Like this is worse. This is worse. Like, no,
so much worse.
Will, no.
From here, we go to the morgue, where we're doing some more police work. We're looking at the bodies. Gideon has been pretty busy. He's been killing these different doctors, pulling out their organs and scrambling their brains. Will once again begins to hallucinate water. This time it's water pouring out of the corpse drawers. I'm sure there's a different term besides corpse drawers, but I could not come up with anything as I was watching this besides corpse drawers. So
I do believe that they're called drawers.
Body barrels? You like that? Is that better? Worse?
I think worse. I'm not sure. But...
Stiff sockets? Is that a thing that we can? No? Okay. Corpse drawers. Corpse drawers
works for me. Let's keep that.
Jack asks why Gideon is removing the organs but scrambling the brain, and of course Will is like, that's what they did to him. Like, they got into his head and mixed him around. Yeah. And so Jack wants to get a list of every doctor that's ever like had a conversation with Gideon, and of course Alana Bloom is on that list. So we're gonna go over and see Alana Bloom be super flirty to the super sick guy again, which I'm getting kind of sick of, if I'm being very honest.
I you know how I feel about that. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's like Will goes to see Alana, who I guess is teaching a class in the same classroom that Will is, or they all look at the same. And Alana is like, you're my FBI protection. What's up? Like, she's being like real flirty. And I'm like, you just told him no twice in a row. Like, you can't tell somebody that they're too crazy for you and then be like, what's up? Why don't I come over? What are you doing?
Netflix and chill.
Will, I've got an exterior killer over here. I need an empath. Like, why are you making that sound so dirty? Stop it, Alana.
I'm just saying that she wants what she cannot have.
Yes,
and she knows that she doesn't actually want Will, I don't think. I think she has true affection for him, but I don't think she really wants him. She just wants him because she can't have him.
As they talk, she touches his face and comments about how warm he is, and he says, I tend to run hot.
You're so close, Alana. You just take him to a doctor.
He shakes a bottle of aspirin at her when she recommends taking it, saying, I'm way ahead of you. And Alana confesses to being worried that not only will Gideon kill again, that Gideon will be killed and being captured, because she feels like she is kind of responsible in her own way. And Will kind of doesn't dismiss this, but like kind of reassures her, like he would have done this anyway. And as they talk, he says, he's looking for the Ripper, not really anybody else. And she says, what do you think will happen when he finds him? And Will says the Ripper will kill him. He took credit for the Ripper's work. The Ripper would consider that rude. And I'm like, Will.
And we're all like, yes, of course.
Will, you were so close.
Yes, that too. See, that's why I'm saying, like, I think there's a part of him that already knows exactly what's going on. It's just that, like, he hasn't really realized what is actually happening. And it's the fact that he responds this, like, without thinking. He's like, oh, the Ripper was going to kill him. Like, he's like, there's no doubt in his mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just love the rude part. We named this podcast so appropriately. We did good.
So appropriate. Yeah, good job. Good job.
Killing the podcast game is what me and Mary are doing right now.
Good grade in podcasting again.
Meanwhile, Freddie Lowndes gets a call from someone named Dr. Carruthers, who had met with Gideon and wrote a paper that Freddie had written, and now wants to collabo with Freddie to write an article. Obviously, we hear the voice on the line and immediately know that it's Gideon.
Yes.
And they arrange a time to meet up, and then we cut to this really beautiful shot of red liquid blood running through IV tubes, and we see
Is it blood?
Is it blood? We see a blood bag being slowly filled, and Freddie Lowndes arrives at Dr. Carruthers' office, except she finds Gideon there, giving Carruthers, having drained him of all of his blood, a Colombian necktie, which is basically when you slice open a throat and pull someone's tongue through it. And
that is
super gross.
So awful.
This one, you see a lot of just like I think it's worse because like the tongue is moving at one point. Like, that's not fun. Yeah. That's not good. And I wanted to be like, Freddie, just run. Like, he doesn't have you. Like, you're like, just turn around and run. And she does not. So.
Yeah. Honestly, like that. And so, you know how we talked about like my dislike for body horror? Like that was the line, I think. Like that was so gross. Like I said, I had to hide a part of the screen when this was happening because I just couldn't look at it. Like, it made me nauseated. And so I kind of realized, I like had a moment where I thought about this, and it turns out that I can excuse mushroom bodies. I can also excuse the body part totem, the wound man. I can excuse the angels with the skin wings and the Glasgow smile. But I draw the line at Colombian neckties.
This is it. This is the limit.
This is the limit.
I genuinely thought when you told me that you were hiding from part of the screen, it would be the thing that Gideon does to Chilton later. I thought that was going to be the thing that gets you.
Oh, yeah. No, that didn't bother me all that much, actually.
Wild. So it's the Colombian necktie.
I know, right?
We skip ahead in time, and Jack, Will, and the team have arrived. Will says Gideon is getting revenge for all the people that have messed with his mind, and he has this line delivery here. It's insane. This line delivery, I don't know what Hugh Dancy does to get into Will Graham's character, because I see pictures of Hugh Dancy on Tumblr. And he just seems to be like this flower child, moonlit fairy type character from everything that I've seen of him, except as Will Graham. And he says this, and he's like, "Gave you something to do with your tongue besides wag it," and I'm like, "Whoa, can you please chill the fuck out?" Like that you were, and like even Jack looks at him like, "Come on, dude." Like we're.
But that's the thing that makes me so mad about all this, right? Like you can clearly see that something is wrong with this man. Like and nobody is like, hey, something might be wrong with him. And I think like that's part of the horror of it all. Like one of my recurring nightmares is that I'm screaming at people, telling them that something's wrong, and like either like we have to get out or we have to like do something in order to like survive, and nobody's listening. And this really feels like that, and that is so incredibly horrific. Like I just yeah I can't.
It's a lot. They determined that it wasn't the Colombian necktie that killed this dude, but it was rather the blood loss. Gideon drained all the blood, bundled it all up in an ice chest, and says, "Please deliver to the Red Cross." Jack describes this as peacocking for the Ripper.
And Will says that it's flowers and chocolate before a first date. And like, I remember saying this at one point about Will and Hannibal, but like that's foreplay.
Yeah, this is
right.
Yeah, if you want to murder husband, you have to do some murder shit on the way there, right? Like you can't just
absolutely.
Yeah. You gotta kill. Got to scramble a few egg brains to get to a murder husband situation.
Definitely.
They move his thumb, which was on a mouse that connected to a computer, and when they do that, the screen comes on, and there's a story that's already up on Tattle Crime about the killing. And at first, they think like maybe a cop leaked it, but as they look at the pictures, they realize, oh no, these pictures were from before all of the blood was taken out. And Will comes to the conclusion that Gideon has Freddy. And sure enough, we go to the observatory where we saw Miriam Lass's arm be found. And Gideon tells Freddy that all of the exits are blocked, and that she's basically trapped. And she does her normal thing, right? Like I think she's on the back foot. She's a little scared, but at the same time, she uses her everything around her to the best that she can, and says like, hey, I can write anything you want to say, like work with me on this story, like I'll let you. And he brings up the story that she wrote for Jack, and she says, yeah, that was all fake. Jack Crawford made me do that to flesh out the Ripper. And Gideon says, well, it worked because then you got Miriam Lass's arm in this room. And I'm like, so is this all on a blog? Like, does everybody know this? Like, where this happens in the MCU too, where like there's Kamala Khan is like, oh, and then the Avengers thought off Thanos, and I'm like, did somebody explain to the population what a Thanos is? Like, do we just know that? Was there a documentary style? Like, I really want there to be I've said this before on a podcast, but an Office style documentary in the MCU. I think it would be absolutely hilarious. Anyway.
Oh my God. Yes, absolutely. But yes, that's a very good question. Like, how did Gideon find out about Miriam Lass's arm? I think is a very good question, because I assume that he doesn't have access to like internet or whatever, right? Like,
you would assume that, yeah. Especially after
you would hope
killing somebody, right?
Exactly. Anyway,
he describes what the Ripper did, and at the end of it, she says, "Aren't you the Ripper?" And he kind of caused this like. Being condescending to him or something, but I'm just like, girl, what are you doing?
Right? Like, I'm like, how is she? I'm like, she's really brave. Like in my dream, I was like so scared to die, and she's just like, "Aren't you the Ripper?" I'm just like, girl.
The character that plays Freddy showed up in The Expanse in the penultimate season, and she still has like reddish tinted hair, but she doesn't have like this bright red hair from Hannibal, and it's very confusing to me. But it's good. Gideon describes his memories, basically not knowing if they're real or fake, and describes them in a very familiar fashion, if you've been listening to the podcast, as realizing that the memories might be just a picture from an old book that you saw.
When I heard that, I paused and I DM'd you. I was like, Jeremy, what the fuck is happening? That I'm like literally saying lines from the show before I watch the episode.
Yeah, we're getting too Hannibal pilled.
I am Will Graham at this point. Like,
right.
My mind knows what's going to happen, but it hasn't told my conscious mind.
Take your temperature right now. Go to a hospital. Find a real doctor. Find a doctor that doesn't know any of your friends, just in case.
Just in case, eh?
Gideon says that he's waiting for the Ripper to appear, knowing that the Ripper reads Freddy's blog. Like, we know that for a fact. And sure enough, we often say cut to Hannibal. I was reading through the script, and I just really like this phrasing of "camera finds Hannibal," which is just very good, and probably like a standard script thing. But I haven't read a lot of scripts, but camera finds Hannibal, and of course he's reading reading the blog, and just the sheer rage that emanates from Mad's body is really intense.
It is amazing the tension that he's able to create with just like standing still. Like, what is wrong with this man that he is able to portray that so efficiently? Like, I will never understand. But everybody in this episode is amazing. Like, Eddie Izzard is fucking fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Hugh Dancy, you've talked about it, and it gets worse or better depending on how you're looking at it. Like, and Mads is just like out of this world. Like, everybody does such an amazing job.
Back at the FBI, we found another dead doctor with the Colombian necktie. They realize that Chilton has been missing. Will thinks that Gideon is going to use Chilton as bait for the Ripper. And Jack Crawford says, it's interesting because Gideon killed this doctor in the exact same way that he killed the previous one, except for one thing: the arm is missing. And Will has this leap where he's like, "Oh, well, this isn't Gideon, this is the Ripper, and he's telling us where to catch him." And he looks at Jack and says, "Actually, he's telling you. When's the last place you saw a severed arm, Jack?" And this happens very quickly in the episodes, because we cut from Hannibal reading this to now we know Hannibal actually went out, found a doctor, killed him. Like, there's some time that's been compressed, right? But I just love the idea, like Hannibal's idea of hinting something to the police is to murder someone in the exact same fashion, except for something that he did. Just a fascinating. I don't even know how to describe my feelings about this. They're overwhelming.
Well, it's crazy, right? Like, again, I don't use that word lightly, but like it's deranged, right? Like.
Yes.
Yeah, anyway. I just love in this scene, like, how uncomfortable Will is to say that, because he knows how sensitive a topic it is, right? Like, when all of this was happening with Miriam Lass and the arm and all of that stuff, like, we saw how disturbed Jack was, right?
100%.
And like, even though he didn't really let it show to other people, like, you're never as good as you think at hiding things. And even Jack Crawford is not as good as he thinks at hiding things, right? And so, like, people knew that he wasn't well. And Will is like, I know that this is really sensitive, but yeah.
Very. You gotta step on you gotta walk on eggshells around Jack when it comes to Miriam. I think he's a little touchy about it.
Yeah, I mean, I would be too, to be honest.
Sure. We move back to the observatory, and Gideon has now kidnapped Chilton, laid him out on a table. He's obviously like under some sort of local anesthetic. I think Gideon even says like he prefers to do surgery with a local anesthetic so that the patient is awake during the process. And we watch. I
think he says something about an epidural, right? Yeah. So that like he can't move, but he can move his arms, I guess, but not like past a certain point in his body.
And we watch in horror, specifically Freddy does, as Gideon carves open Freddy's stomach and literally starts removing his organs and showing them to Chilton, literally having to slap him awake as like he starts to pass out from the overwhelming sensation that this must be. And he says, "You got inside my head, Frederick. It's only right that I get inside your belly." I'm really surprised this scene didn't gross you out, because this is one of the few that I'm like, don't want to see this too often. This is rough.
Yes. Oh, it is. But the necktie got me more. And by that point I was like, oh, okay, all right. I guess we're like, I guess this is just going to be a gross episode. And I was like, okay, I can do this. And I also think that I was focusing on something else when I was watching this, because I was like, what is he doing, right? Like this idea of like getting inside your head, getting inside your belly, like, because I podcasted with our common friend Katie on Our Flag Means Death, right? And there's this scene in season 1 where Steed and Blackbeard, who are like two pirates, for those who haven't necessarily watched the show, they're literally like poking each other in the belly with swords, right? Like one of them like stabs the other, and it was very clearly, like when you watched it, it was very clearly a metaphor for intercourse. And the creators even said later on that, like, yes, this was exactly their intention. And So I'm watching this. I'm catching flirty vibes between Gideon and Chilton, and I'm seeing parallels between like them and Will and Hannibal. And I'm so sorry to say this, but like this is definitely a metaphor for intercourse. Like it's a horror themed intercourse, but it's intercourse nonetheless. Mm-hmm. Like I just like this is we talked about like flowers and chocolate. We talked about like this is like horror sex. Like I'm so sorry.
No, it's so interesting that you say this because a movie came out recently, Deadpool versus Wolverine. And I don't think this is a spoiler to say that in a movie called Deadpool and Wolverine are going to fight each other.
What?
Right? Surprise! Ruined the movie.
Yeah.
And that movie is, as a straight cis person, I think I'm allowed to say this, fucking gay as hell. Because there's a whole scene of Wolverine and Deadpool fighting. And for those that are out there that don't tune into comic book stuff, like it's important to remember, like both Wolverine and Deadpool have like regenerative properties. So like you can stab them and then they just heal up. And Wolverine has 3 claws and Deadpool has swords, and they spend I'm like a significant amount of time penetrating one another, just over and over and over again in different positions. They move around an entire like car. There's like music playing during this whole thing. And I'm not even getting to, that's not even like the super gay part of the movie. This is just in the middle, like, and they're just penetrating each other over and over and over and over again. And I was like, wow, so they just made this. Because there was always like Deadpool is like canonically like pansexual in the comic books, right? And in the movies, like Ryan Reynolds has played this of like him kind of obsessing over male bodies and things like that, and like all of the subtext has been removed now. Now it is literally just text, and I feel like it's the same thing here, right? Like, and I mean, maybe more of that happens in this show. I don't know. Probably not. Will's probably going to be fine by the end of season 1. So,
of course. Yes.
I'm sure there's.
I mean, listen.
I'm sure there's no situation where they're going to be stabbing at each other at any point.
I am so sure that that's exactly what's going to happen. Like, it's just again because if you think that like the parallels between like Gideon and Chilton and Will and Hannibal are there, which I think the show again works overtime to kind of like make us see. Of course, they're going to stab each other. Right? Like,
this is. I get it. I guess to your point is I agree. is the small one, short way to say that.
And like to be clear, this is not like this just because again like this is a horror show. I want to be super super clear that this is not a healthy thing that's happening that we're seeing, right? But like it is.
Hot.
Very, very.
Okay, no, sorry.
I mean, I wasn't really going there, but sure, Jeremy.
It doesn't have to be healthy to be hot, right? Like that's a thing that we can all get behind.
That's actually very true. Yeah. Yes. Okay, I can definitely get behind that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be healthy to be hot. Should be the name of this podcast, probably.
Yes, actually, yes, I like that.
Gideon describes that he's creating a gift basket for the Ripper when he arrives. Literally, just having Chilton, he piles up organs where his stomach has been opened into Chilton's like hands so that he can't move. Like almost like a turkey basket on Thanksgiving, or like just like this spilling, like this bounty of meat that you would see in like the Great British Bake Off or something. Like who's eating all those cakes that are in the background of the Bake Off? Like where does that go? But
it's a cornucopia of human meat.
Cornucopia is exactly the word that I was looking for. So thank you very much. I just couldn't get there. So yeah, this is yeah. It's a lot.
So is it going to be like, does it have to be healthy to be hot, or a cornucopia of human meat?
Listeners, please let us know. Actually, I'm not going to remember to ask you guys that when this episode comes out. So this is super gross, and super not fun. We switch over to Jack and Will driving towards the observatory. And Jack tells Will he should wait outside, and Will's like, absolutely, bro. Like, you do not need to give me a gun and like ability to walk into a crime scene. He says that he feels like hell, and he scratches that. He says, actually, I feel like fluid, like I'm spilling.
Jesus Christ. Like, can we talk about that for a second? Because like in your notes, you had like stuff that like is right there, but I'm like, we need to talk about this because like, what does this mean for Will? Like like, what does it mean to feel fluid or like you're spilling when you're Will Graham, right? Like, because he's been so unsure of who he is for a while now. And like what we think brought it on, or what we have been showed brought it on, is like him killing Garrett Jacob Hobbs, right? So like there's a very strong link between that moment and how he's feeling right now. And it's like, before that moment, he had a pretty good idea of like who he was, and like then eventually that became really, really malleable, really fluid, right? Like he's like, but if I can kill, because the whole point was that he hadn't been able to pull the trigger before, and in that moment he pulled the trigger, he killed someone, and that changed him fundamentally, right? So he's becoming this thing, this fluid, and like, what happens to this new fluid, liquid person under pressure?
Yeah. Typically, water turns to steam under pressure, right? Which is like we saw a little bit of that when he was having his nightmares at the beginning of the episode, if the water literally steaming off of him. Also, when we talk about spilling, one of the things I think about is like a cup overflowing. And if we presume that Will is that cup, and that he has slowly been filling himself up with Garrett Jacob Hobbs, with the Angel Maker killer, with all of these different, with the Totem Pole Maker, like all of these different killers that he's had this empathy with, while at the same time being gaslit by Hannibal to question his identity, while his brain is literally on fire, like it is literally burning up. Like I would imagine that all of these identities that he was able to keep separate in his head while he does his empathy thing, all start blending together, and again we have this cup overflowing. His identity is literally spilling over the rim, so he doesn't know who he is anymore.
That's such a good observation. And like, I don't know, early on in the season they talked a lot about the walls in his mind kind of coming down, and here it's like there are no more walls, there's no more solid, like there's no more solid ground, there is no more bedrock, like it's all liquid. And it plays into like some of the theming they do in the show, like we mentioned earlier, that
Will's color is blue, right? Like we see him in a lot of blues, we see blue associated with him, and of course blue generally means water, and seeing him literally just like get poured into a different shape is very terrifying. And hearing this, Jack. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, like, especially because you told me that Hannibal is often associated with red, which we see very clearly. But like Will's brain being on fire means that Hannibal is in his brain.
Yes.
100%. Hannibal got inside his brain, so it's only fair that Will gets inside his belly. I did the thing, Jeremy. I did the thing.
You did the thing. I am going to keep moving on, and so I don't say anything. Jack has a worried look when he comes to this, when he hears Will say this, and he warns Will that the job that they do can, quote, compromise your immune system. And he tells Will, like, very forcefully, you have to let go. You have to let go of these things that you see. And Will just says, it's hard to shake off something that's already under your skin. And if I was if I was Jack, I would not be driving this man to a potential crime scene. Like, what are you doing? Take this man to a hospital immediately, please.
But that's the thing, right? Like, he needs medical attention. And he even says, like, Will says something about how he thinks that he's come down with something that's not contagious. Like, he is telling you he needs help. Yes. And what are you doing? You're driving him to a crime scene. I know it has sparked some conversation in I think it's on the Monster of the Week server about like how we're very harsh on Jack, but I don't see how else we can approach him. Like, he is, but you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying that like Jack is a bad person, blah, 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 but like, just, I feel like Jack fails in every respect in his life except at his job. And I'm just like, that is such a fucking tragedy, because I don't think that Jack is a bad person, but like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah. You don't have to be a bad person to do bad things, right? Like Jack's motivations are very, very clear. He wants to catch serial killers. The fact that he is willing to sacrifice some part of his relationship with his wife from her words, not his, right? Like she said that about him. The fact that he's willing to sacrifice Miriam last and put her into a compromising situation that got her killed. The fact that he's willing to continually push Will up to a certain point and then take his hands off the wheel. Like, oh no, I didn't do it. My hands weren't on the wheel at the time. And all of that stuff is negative. And it's hard to look at Jack and not think about him just literally doing anything that he can, right or wrong, to try to do the good thing. And it's, that classic, does the ends justify the means situation? And for Jack, they absolutely do. It's worth driving Will crazy to catch the Chesapeake River. It's worth sacrificing Miriam, even though he feels very complicated and guilty about it, but it's worth doing that to catch the Chesapeake River. And that really, I think that's the reason.
He has said those words,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ. Jack Crawford, what the fuck? Anyway,
they arrive at the observatory, and Jack grabs his classic shotgun. He doesn't put on the Morpheus shades, unfortunately. We're not going into that side of the Matrix on this episode. And they approach the observatory. Will's back in the car, and his vision starts fading in and out. Like, you can tell the sickness is getting worse and worse. And he kind of stumbles out of the car and begins to follow them to the observatory, and then he stops. And he looks over and he sees the stag in the distance. And then the stag walks towards the woods, and Will decides to follow. Jack gets into the observatory, finds Freddy and Frederick. Freddy just basically keeping his lungs inflated with the little air thing. Calls for a medic. And we're not going to really deal with any of that stuff for the rest of this episode.
We don't need to, right? It's not necessary.
Give me my murder husbands. Let's move on. Yes. I do want to see.
That are stabbing each other in the belly.
I want to read the article that Freddie writes about this, but I don't want to see it happen. So
yes, exactly.
Meanwhile, Gideon is watching the observatory from a distance, obviously waiting for the Ripper to arrive. And when he doesn't show, and the police do, he gets to his car. And once he gets there, he finds an extremely delirious Will in the back seat, but holding a gun on him. I just want to mention that this vehicle they're in is a Jeep Wagoneer with the wood paneling, and is one of Autumn's favorite vehicles ever. I think if I could find one of these, despite the fact that they have shitty gas mileage and terrible shocks, she would be like, yes, let's buy this. He looks back at Will and says, I was expecting the Chesapeake Ripper unless you are him. And Will looks at him, and all Will sees is Garrett Jacob Hobbs.
Yeah. It's the moment that I saw that Will saw Garrett Jacob Hobbs, I was like, oh, he's going to kill him. Mm-hmm. Will is for sure going to kill this man. He's going to kill again, right? Which is kind of the whole thing about Will's character. Did he enjoy killing Garrett Jacob Hobbs so much that he is willing to do it twice?
Yes. Who am I really? Am I a person who enjoys killing, or am I a person that catches killers? Also, it's kind of fascinating to me, we make a lot of comparisons between Gideon and Chilton's relationship to Will and Hannibal's relationship, and Gideon has also obviously been psychically driven to believe that he is the Chesapeake Ripper, and he's coming out of that. I find it really interesting that he asked Will, are you the Chesapeake Ripper? Because
I know.
It's just one of those things where you're like,
Well, because again, if Hannibal is in Will's head, then, right?
Yeah. So,
and I have more thoughts about that for later. We'll talk about that later, because oh my god.
Gideon brings Will to his doctor, which is Hannibal, and it's just very funny to me that it was who's your doctor? And Will was like, Hannibal Lecter, such and such.
Cut to Hannibal.
Yes, camera finds Hannibal.
Camera finds Hannibal. I just love this scene because there's Will and Hannibal under the painting of the goose and the woman that we talked about at length in a previous episode. And there's also 3 huge eggs as decoration on the dining table. And you just know that this situation is about to hatch, that is
It's a pretty literal visual metaphor. Yeah, I agree with you.
Absolutely, right? And I'm just this show is so good.
Show is so
I
fun.
keep saying that, but it's so good. They have anyway, it's amazing. I love
also,
it.
these fucking ostrich eggs or something. Where did these come from? I know you didn't go to Pier 1 to get these eggs, Hannibal. Where did you order these? What specialty egg store did you get these giant eggs from to decorate your dining room table?
They're actually dragon eggs.
That's what they look like. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, Daenerys is going to be pissed when she sees this episode.
Yep.
Will tells Hannibal that he doesn't know who he is anymore, which is, I think, a sign of him breaking down a bit. Obviously, all of this stuff is him breaking down.
It's him spilling over, right? And Hannibal does that little exercise thing of telling him it's 7:27, you're in Baltimore and you're Will Graham, and Will just screams, I don't care who I am. And it's in that moment it's a bit shocking, right? Because we're seeing the mounting pressure of the encephalitis, the stress, and the manipulation that Hannibal is putting Will through, and all of that is kind of making it so that Hannibal's plan is working. His plan is hatching.
Yes,
literally, right?
Literally hatching. Yeah.
Yep.
Will points to Gideon and says, "Tell me he's real." And Will sees Garrett Jacob Hobbs, but of course it's actually Dr. Gideon, and Hannibal lies, saying that there's nobody there.
And so I need to take it back because this is the first time that I see Hannibal denying anything. What the fuck is happening?
The gaslighting, man. It's so bad. To know that Will is in such a spot that he would even believe you. That he's so sick and he's so ill and he's so going through such a crisis that he's not trusting his own senses and he's relying on Hannibal's senses for him, and Hannibal is lying to him. To put that level of trust in somebody is insane, especially to have it twisted.
Exactly. I think that's such a good point, especially because he's don't lie to me, please don't lie to me. He is begging him, please don't lie to me. And Hannibal is Will, you're having an episode. And I'm just what?
And Will literally kind of collapses while standing up. He's starting to have a seizure, and his eyes are rolling back in his head. He's physically shaking. Hannibal grabs his gun and does a cursory check of his eyes, and tells Gideon
he grabs his face and
yes.
his neck, and he is it doesn't have to be healthy to be hot. Okay. That was hot.
Well, it reminded me of the first episode where he powerfully closes his hand around Abigail's neck wound, right? He just takes control of the situation.
Powerfully closes his hand around Abigail's neck.
Sorry.
Jeremy.
Am I activating something? I apologize.
You're going to need to move on.
Hannibal doesn't seem bothered by this, and even Gideon's you don't seem really concerned, and Hannibal's I said it was a mild seizure, the NBD.
I think that's again that is so shocking because Gideon, who is clearly not in his right mind, is serving as a foil to Hannibal in this moment where he's yeah, this is not normal. Something's wrong with this dude, and okay, I guess we're not going to worry about that.
I love this exchange where Hannibal asks, "Are you the man who claimed to be the Chesapeake Ripper?" And Gideon says, "Why do you say claimed?" That's such a good line. And as they kind of verbally go back and forth, Gideon starts to brag about what he got out of his own psychiatrist, referring to Chilton.
Okay, well, again, I have to say, this felt like a warning to Hannibal, okay? Because like I said, as messed up as Gideon is in this moment, he's extremely smart, I think, anyway. And he immediately understood what was going on between Will and Hannibal. And he's so I don't have a problem with you, my guy, but the sick one over there, he might at some point. So watch out is all I'm saying.
He might have an issue. Definitely might have an issue.
Yeah. He might stab you in the belly is what I'm saying,
Hannibal says that
I love how you're changing the topic every time I say this. I'm so scared. Sorry.
It's going to be a long, long road through season 2. A long, long road. We're going to have a lot of fun in season 2.
Okay.
Will might be fine. You don't know. Who knows? Will could be coming out of this,
of course,
gangbusters. Who knows? He's going to be totally okay. Certainly not going to get worse, right? How could it possibly get worse at this point?
I was really hoping that they would close the encephalitis story by the end of season 1. Now I'm not so sure, and I'm oh my god, this is going to be so hard.
They have to keep going through this. Yeah. Hannibal brings up that Alana Bloom was one of Gideon's doctors, and then says, "Hey, I can tell you where to find her," which is just an extraordinarily evil thing to do, even by Hannibal standards.
I know, right? Like, I mean, literally serving up this woman that, like, he's flirting with, like, not too long ago, right? Like, why didn't we have an affair? Like, and now it's like, I can tell you where to find her. But he has a plan.
He does. And as Gideon disappears, sometime later, Will starts to come to. He's at the dining room table at Hannibal's house, and Hannibal checks him out, makes him lift his arms just to make sure he didn't have a stroke, makes him smile. And it was at this moment I was like, wow, we found a better Joker than Joaquin Phoenix. Because this smile is like such a tortured affair. It's the best he can do in the current situation, but God, it's fucking heartbreaking. It's just I don't even know like how I could make myself smile like this. Like to be an actor is a fucking nuts. I just don't get it.
Honestly, same. And it's also like the cut to Hannibal moment, right? Where he's like smiling back at Will, like so softly. He's like, "Oh yeah, that was a good smile, baby. You did really good." Like, like I hate this so much.
Just gives him the old good girl, and Will's like,
yes,
"Wait a minute,
good girl, Will." Like, oh no.
Hannibal tells Will he's been running a fever, that he arrived hallucinating about Garrett Jacob Hobbs, and tells him that it's a delusion disguised as reality. And Hannibal does something slick here. He stands up and he's like, you're still running a fever. I'm going to call Jack to bring you to a hospital. Meanwhile, Gideon is at large, and I'm worried about him going to attacking Alana. So I'm going to go like try to protect her. And then he walks out of the room and he leaves the gun and his keys on the table. And of course, Will sees this and is like, "Oh yeah, I've got a plan. I'm gonna grab this and leave." And
he's just so sick that he doesn't realize that this is a manipulation too, because where the fuck is Hannibal going? I'm swearing a lot. I'm so sorry, but I'm so mad about this. But like, where is Hannibal going from like his mansion in the middle of nowhere, like without his car keys, you know? Like and again, it's making me think that like the show itself, you know how I was like, it feels like the show is kind of working to tell us this. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what the show is doing.
100%.
And I feel like there's like this meta commentary to be made about the show manipulating the audience the same way that Hannibal is manipulating Will almost, right?
Yes, we're all being psychically driven to like Hannibal. That's the thing. We all love this man.
Okay,
we're definitely not supposed to. I'm curious. It'll be fascinating to find out how both of us feel about Hannibal at the end of the series, I think.
Yeah.
Because we will have obviously seen all of the evil that he can do by that point, and I'll be curious how he measures up at the end.
So I said to you earlier this week, I was like, I don't understand how I'm supposed to like Hannibal after any of this. Because like with a series that's titled after a character, like you have to be rooting for this character somehow, even if he's evil, even if this, even if that. And I'm like, I don't quite understand how I'm supposed to be rooting for him anymore after everything that he's done to Will. And you said something like, oh, well, they would have to introduce somebody worse than him. And I don't know why, but my mind immediately went to Bedelia. I was like, is Bedelia really worse than Hannibal?
Oh, Bedelia. Yeah, we're gonna put a pin on that and talk about that at a later date.
Jesus Christ.
Just who could be worse than Hannibal? Anyway, so Gideon arrives at Alana's house and is watching her from a distance. Will is shortly behind him. We don't know how long Gideon's been here, but Will is stumbling through the snow to get to Gideon, trying to line up a shot at first, and then like eventually just giving up. Like he can barely hold the gun up. He's so out of it. The music in this scene is especially great. Like it's all like tones and warbles, and I just absolutely love it. Like the tension, the pressure that it's putting us all under is intense.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've said this before, but like the scoring of the whole show is absolutely fantastic. Like I love the dissonance and everything, like to make us feel weird about what's going on, right? Like it's very clear about when we should be feeling good and when we should be feeling awkward. And I kind of love that because so far the music is the only thing about the show that's been really honest about the characters.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Like everyone's kind of hiding who they are to an extent, but the music is like, nope, this guy's a killer. Exactly. We know it. He's killing people.
Yeah.
Will walks up to Gideon and they begin to have a conversation. I mentioned this earlier, but Gideon talks about how he doesn't even know if he'll ever be himself again. He says like he doesn't even know who his self is. It's getting hard to remember who I was and who I wasn't. And he points out like that he and Will are kind of the same.
Vindication!
And he says, we are people who shouldn't be in a relationship. We are already committed. It's hard to be with another person when you can't get out of your own head. And here, obviously, if you weren't already paying attention to the similarities between Gideon and Chilton and Hannibal and Will's relationship, that they just fucking tell you, they just put it in the text. They're like, here, this is the thing. Like, Hannibal is in this dude's brain, and Gideon sees it and understands it. Like, he's not as sick as Will. Mm-hmm. So when he saw Will and Hannibal interacting with each other, he saw exactly what Chilton was trying to do to him. Just
yeah, screaming, crying,
and Gideon
throwing up.
Yes, absolutely. Gideon says he wants to kill Alana so that he can be like the Ripper. He wants to kill like in the Ripper style, so that he'll understand the Ripper more. And Will kind of is not really responding to a lot of this. He looks over, and Gideon is still appearing as Garrett Jacob Hobbs to him. And Gideon looks at him and says, maybe after that, you'll understand what you've become. Which is an interesting thing for Gideon to say to Will here. But it sets something off in Will's brain, and Will just literally shoots the man in cold blood.
I think that Will's hallucinations are trying to tell him what's going on, right? I've said this before in this episode, but like, I really do think, and I've said this actually in another episode about the stag, I think, I do believe that like, there's something in him that's trying to warn him about certain things. Like, if we stick to this one, like the fact that he saw Gideon as Garrett Jacob Hobbs, I think was a way for his brain to kind of warn him that this guy was going to try to harm people that he loves. Like, just like Garrett Jacob Hobbs tried to kill Abigail, right? And it's particularly, like, I have it in my notes, the word interesting, but it's particularly horrifying because in one of the papers that I read for the last episode, I think it was the one about like the patients who had like Cotard syndrome as a result of their NMDAR encephalitis, which is Will's hidden diagnosis. One of the patients was convinced that the right half of his heart had died. And he kept saying that to doctors, right? Like that was a symptom of his Cotard syndrome. But it turns out that the right half of his brain was inflamed from the encephalitis. And so I just think that like our bodies have a way of like subconsciously trying to communicate with our conscious minds. And that's what Will is experiencing right now.
Yes, 100% agree. His hallucinations, the water rushing over him turning to liquid in his bed, losing his identity, seeing antlers surrounding Jack Crawford, associating that with Garrett Jacob Hobbs' kill room, like his trophy room, associating that with like Jack's room I think is super interesting as well. Just kind of
the trophy room. Ooh, I like that.
And again, all of this because his brain is literally on fire. And like just give the man an aspirin and he'll probably be 500% better tomorrow. I guess he's been chewing aspirin, probably antibiotics or something. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. Do not listen to me for medical advice.
Well, encephalitis is like an infection, right? And so yes, he needs antibiotics. Like he has something, like he has some kind of infection. And in this case, I think from what I remember, it's like it's an autoimmune disease. So like it's his own system that's attacking him, right? Like it's just insane. Crazy.
Absolutely crazy. And very, very intense. And after Will shoots him, we see Alana react to this from inside of her house. She looks out the window and sees Will and standing over Gideon's dead body. And then we cut to Jack's office.
Will collapses.
Will collapses
like,
as well.
Completely collapses, like face first in the snow.
Thank you for pointing that out. I kind of forgot about that.
I just, because it got me, right? Like he just, fuck.
At Jack's office, Hannibal is there, and Jack says that Chilton has a chance of surviving. He's been in surgery all night, like they're sewing that dude back up. But he's more worried about Will, who was running a 105 temperature. which I, again, am not a medical scientist or doctor by any means, but like 105 is that level of like, we could do some permanent damage to your body at this point. Like we need to bring your temperature down. Unless you have some sort of alien retrograde virus infected you, which case Scully will come along and say, don't put him in the cold water. The heat's the only, anyway, it doesn't matter. We've all seen that episode.
I so badly wanted to say something, and I was like, no, I can't. So I'm glad that you did. Thank you
if
so
you
much.
can't, I will. One of us will bring up the
Yes.
X-Files, which
Good.
again, being my normal Sunday routine now, like I'm going to finish this podcast, go watch an episode of the X-Files, and then go talk about it. So it's going to be super fun. I like Hannibal is obviously concerned about Will's well-being, and Jack is almost dismissive when he talks about it. He's like, no. I mean, even with all of that going on, he still brought down Gideon, and I'm like, brought down Gideon? Like, he shot the man in cold blood. Like, this shouldn't be the ideal for your fucking agents, like especially agents that aren't actually agents.
Like this, I think again, like this kind of shows or illustrates, right, that like Jack cares about nothing except for his work, like deep down, right? Like Will's life might very well be in danger. He's running a 105 temperature, and Jack is like, no, he's fine because he shot Gideon. And like, then there's a part of me that's also like, well, it could also be guilt that's speaking, right? Because like maybe Jack is feeling guilty that like when Will was just telling him like a few hours ago that he was sick, and Jack was like, well, you can't let work consume you. Like he thought that this was clearly just like a mental thing, but it turns out that no. Will is actually very, very physically sick. And like he didn't catch that.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, no, he knew. He
had to know. He absolutely had to know.
He just didn't care.
Like Jack observed Will. Like he even told, like, I'm not going to make you get out of the car. Like you should stay in the car at the crime scene. Like at the point that you're doing that, you know something is going on with your boy. You should fix your boy.
Yeah.
Come get your boy. Hannibal even suggests like we need to remove his ability to carry a firearm, which is funny in several different ways. Like I think he just doesn't want Will to have any sort of protection around Hannibal at this point, right? Like Hannibal is like just kind of watching out for himself.
Yeah, Hannibal is like, yeah, that was a little too close because you could have shot me in that room there if you had like, because he was having a seizure, right? Like if you spasm, you could have shot me. And Jack is just like not on board at all with this idea. And he says, you and I are just going to have a difference of opinion about that. And I am just like,
what?
Again.
What?
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
Why does he need a gun? Like he's not... I mean, granted, he has shot and killed 2 serial killers at this point. We don't know that Gideon is dead, but we're assuming that Gideon is dead. But like he's shot 2 serial killers and caught 2 serial killers with this gun. But also, why does he need a gun? It doesn't.
But that's exactly what Jack is saying, right? He's like, oh, he's killed 2 of them now. Let's make him keep his gun because the only thing that is truly driving Jack is his work.
Yes.
And like, I don't care what he says because his actions are showing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm upset, Jeremy.
Hannibal has one final line here where he says, our experience shape us, Jack. How will this experience shape Will?
Hannibal's questions.
And then we see a scene of Alana in the hospital where Will is finally presumably getting the care that he needs. I guess we'll find out next episode. Probably going to be fine, right? Will's probably...
Well, no, because they can't figure out what it is, and I'm just like, give this man an MRI!
Please put it back in the tube. But Alana is holding his hand and being there to support him. And then the camera finds Hannibal, where he is talking to Bedelia. And this... It's so tough as just a normal person, a person of average intelligence as I am, to keep up with some of the dialogue in this series. Because
I agree.
Especially when Bedelia and Hannibal start fucking Hannibal talking to each other and they're like coded language. It's just like I'm having to pause it and like write down everything just to even get like a handle on what the fuck they are saying and implying to one another. Because they are literally talking to each other. Like the dialogue is so good. It's like on several different levels.
Yes.
And it's just crazy. Hannibal describes wanting to contain Will's madness like an oil spill, and like Bedelia's just right there. It says oil is valuable. What value does Will's madness have for you? And I'm like, excuse me, like who are you? Who taught who to talk like this? Did y'all both just discover it together?
Okay, so it really hit me in this episode that she talks just like him. And all that she is missing in this moment is like, tell me, Hannibal, what value does Will's madness have for you? And I'm just like, ah!
And he talks about Will's like natural born ability to see things in people and to be empathic. And he talks about it almost wistfully, which I find interesting.
Yeah, he says that he sees himself in Will, and Bedelia's immediate follow-up question is like, tell me, Hannibal, do you see yourself in his madness? Which, like, yes, right? We were talking about Hannibal being in Will's head, right? Through the visual of the encephalitis, the inflammation, the fire in his brain. And like, are you the Chesapeake Ripper? Like, we've been talking about the whole point of Hannibal putting Will through this is kind of to make him more like Hannibal so that Will can understand him, specifically so that Hannibal can feel understood.
I wonder if that's going to work or have any other potential.
I don't know. I don't know.
And if we're going to talk about that in the future at all. He describes Will's madness as a medication specifically for like the normalcy of reality, right? And Bedelia mentions that like that you can overdose on that, and he says, but you have to take medication in small doses. And she says, Will Graham doesn't present you with problems of a normal life. What does he present you with? And Hannibal thinks about this question and says, an opportunity of friendship. And she kind of warns him here. She's like, look, if you find yourself willing, like you're his psychiatrist, you're his therapist, like if you find yourself wanting to take that step forward, you need to follow up that urge with the ability to step back. And specifically says, like, sometimes all we can do is watch. And in response to him questioning, like, do I just watch him go mad? Do I not help? And she goes, sometimes all we can do is watch. And I'm like, Bedelia, like you can take the man to a doctor. I think that's ethically okay.
But that's the thing, right? Because he is, in the way that Hannibal is talking about this, he is omitting like a very, very, very hugely important detail here. The fact that he knows like the source of Will's quote unquote madness, right? He knows that he has encephalitis. He knows what's going on, but he is not saying, right? And then the question becomes, has Bedelia figured that out? Yes or no? And is Bedelia kind of telling him like, well, at this point, all you can do is watch because you have created the situation where you can't say anything about this? Or is she just an innocent psychiatrist who is like reminding Hannibal that he should remain professional with his patient, right? Like, and I don't believe that Hannibal would want to pursue a friendship with this person if she wasn't also some form of deranged.
Wow. People are going to be so mad that we're just not hating on Bedelia, but that we're talking this way about Bedelia. I love it.
I love her though.
Yeah,
like, to be clear, I love her.
You can forgive cannibalism, but I also think there's another level here. So if we think back to conversations that Bedelia and Hannibal have had, the one that I go back to specifically is talking about the veil of humanity, or his person suit.
Yes.
And I wonder if her warning here isn't to prevent Hannibal from being involved with Will, but is almost trying to, in a very subtle fashion, so subtle that Hannibal doesn't even pick up on it, is trying to protect Will. If she's warning the thing that she suspects is behind the veil to not take a step forward, worried about what the consequences of that would be for Will Graham. Like, if she's not more sympathetic to Will than we're being led to believe.
Are you saying that she is psychically manipulating him or whatever? Like, is that what you're saying?
I mean, if you think about it, all therapy is psychically manipulating people, right? Like, no, I'm kidding.
Sure. But, well, I mean, the whole goal of therapy is to be upfront about this, right? Like, look at the ways you are thinking, and this is the way that it's wrong. Think this way instead, right? It's very open about the process of it.
Yes.
But, like, if Bedelia is doing what you're suggesting that she might be doing, then she is manipulating Hannibal the same way that Hannibal is manipulating Will, only she is doing it like in the interest of Will.
Yes. And and I think that that's probably the only way that you can be a therapist to Hannibal, right? Is by and I think like that speaks to the relationship that they have, because Hannibal is so incredibly smart, and he can pick up when people are trying to do this. Like obviously he looks down in disdain at Frederick's
Jesus Christ.
Frederick's kind of like cumbersome attempts to do this with Gideon. Like he knew it immediately. He picked up on it.
Yeah, the subject cannot be aware.
Exactly.
Right?
So I'm at the same time that she's talking to the person behind the veil, I wonder how much Hannibal is picking up on that as well. Like I wonder how many levels deep that they're really taking it. And it's, man, maybe we'll find out in the next couple of episodes. I don't know. I don't know what happens in the next couple of episodes. Who can even tell? We're gonna have to go take a run about it.
Whenever I'm transcribing an episode, I realize how often I scream.
It's good though.
Like,
people love it.
Stop.
People absolutely love it. Yeah,
okay, good.
I think people being able to live vicariously through somebody as they experience something for the first time, I think is really interesting. One of my This is a little bit of a tangent, but one of my favorite Let's Plays. You're familiar with what Let's Plays are on YouTube and everything? Like people playing video games, basically.
No. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So it was this woman named Kay Plays, and she was playing Dark Souls for the first time, completely blind. I talk about Dark Souls a lot on podcasts, so I'm sorry to make you experience this in person.
No, I'm very happy actually to hear you talk about something you love. It's great. I love it.
Dark Souls is one of those games that like you could play through and not particularly pick up on exactly what's going on. And like almost every single item in the game has a paragraph of text or a couple of sentences of text that tells you something about the world. Me and one of my Dark Souls friends jokes about like, imagine finding a sword with a Post-it note with its history on it, right? Like, because I get that's what it feels like in game. Like it doesn't make any sense that we know this stuff about the items. So if you read these item descriptions, and if you pay attention to what characters say to you, and some very like Hannibal-esque, like very subtle kind of crazy ways, you can pick up on what's happening. Clues lead you to secrets in the game that are not extremely obvious, which will open up whole worlds, which gives you more clues to what's actually going on in the game. To bring this back to Kay Play, she's going in blind. So going in blind means like I'm not looking at any Wikipedias, I'm not accepting help from YouTube commenters. I'm just going to go in and play the game. And Dark Souls is known for being like hard to understand from the get-go, of just like people bouncing off of it. And she goes in with such an ability to observe and to relate and to put things together that by the end of the game, like she's found some of the hardest secrets to find. She's like putting together the overarching plot that like lore masters on YouTube had been talking about for a couple of years, like things like that. And the reason I'm talking about all of this is to relate it to your experience with Hannibal, where you're going in completely blind and you're observing and analyzing and coming to conclusions that are really fucking good and interesting. And it's so fun to listen to and watch. And I think listeners are responding to that very well. Like I don't think that like, I don't know. I think that's a huge part of the show. You screaming is a huge part of the show at this point. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll continue screaming then. It makes it hard in the transcripts because it's like Marie screaming.
It's fine. It's totally fine. There's we watched Taskmaster. Yeah. And there's we've been watching it with subtitles recently on the most recent season, and it's their intro is very like like it's characters like doing stuff, and watching the subtitles for like it's just very funny.
It's all you were talking earlier about like comic books and like how they have to like create those sounds like on paper. It really feels sometimes when I'm transcribing like, oh my god, how am I gonna make it sound like tortured scream or anxious scream?
So much fun.
I do want to bring back like very, very briefly before we close, because usually you ask me if there's anything else that I want to bring up, and there is this one thing that I want to bring up. This normal problems of normal life. Remember at the very beginning of the episode where Chilton talked about like, if only I had been more interested in like the problems of normal life or the normal problems of life or whatever. And here, like another like link between those two men, between Chilton and Hannibal, no matter the fact that like Chilton is like a like cheap version of Hannibal, like Hannibal is like, Will is like an escape from the problems of normal life. Like Will gives me something more than that, showing that he is also not interested in the problems of normal life, right? Like, and I love as gross as this episode was, I loved it. I thought it was so good.
Sure, absolutely. And, Hannibal that we've seen throughout this series is only interested in the exceptional, right? And the exceptional doesn't necessarily mean, like, I think he has a complete different yardstick when it comes to what exceptional means, right? He's not looking for athletes or for extremely smart people. He's looking for people that maybe to a degree that he can mold and control, but I think he's looking for people who he believes are suppressing a part of themselves.
Yes.
And so he sees in Will, like he looks at Will and he's like, that dude could become a killer. That dude is so worried about becoming a killer, and I want to fuck with him. I want to mess with. I want to move the furniture around his brain. And the exact same thing happens.
You can remove the with, by the way.
Sure, yeah.
But I agree. Yeah,
and he does the same thing with Abigail, where he sees something. He sees something exceptional in her. He sees an exceptional, maybe possibly an exceptional killer that he can mold and control and grow. And it's only those exceptional people that he allows himself to open up even a little bit. Even with his flirtations with Alana are like very surface level, and obviously like every interaction with Jack is basically like a game of chess that Jack is over there with like checkers. He doesn't even understand that he's playing a game.
Jack has no clue. But that's why I'm saying, like, there's something about Bedelia that has to be, to use your words, exceptional, right? So what is the exceptional? What is Bedelia's exceptionality? And is my question.
And I'm very curious about that as well, because like the way that she is treating him, the way that she can flip his mind back on itself, it has to be on the level that he is. And then we think about, like, she tried to retire and he kind of didn't let her. And also another thing that we know is that she was attacked by a patient. Like, what is the history there? Like, how did this come about?
Did Hannibal like do something to make sure that the patient would attack her? We don't know. Maybe
we don't know.
Perhaps.
I guess we could go to IMDb and see how many episodes Bedelia is in. But that's no fun.
Oh, I suppose we could do that. But I'm not doing that.
Who wants to do that?
No, I'm not doing that. Stop trying to psychically drive me, Jeremy. How about we move on to our reviews section?
Let's move on.
Before you start spoiling me.
Why don't you go first?
So I have been saying this consistently throughout the episode, but I loved it. I think it was really, really great. I will give it 4 stars because this rôti was roasted to perfection with its rich and savory flavors and its breathtakingly rare interior.
I'm going for the rare 3 stars this week. The rôti was divine with unexpected flavors and adornments. The meat on the bone left me wanting for more. I like this episode a lot. I think it's placed in such a way that spending 30 minutes with Gideon stuff, even as it reflects back on Will, I'm just like, no, Will and Hannibal. That's why I'm here. Will and Hannibal. Yeah. Very much like end of Supernatural vibes, where I'm like, why are we hunting a vampire? Yes. What are we doing? You have 3 episodes left. Don't hunt a vampire.
So I think that I'm much more willing to forgive that, just because, like, Eddie Izzard is such an amazing actor. Like, she does such a great job in this role. Like, it's quite amazing to see, like, just her putting on this amazing show, right? Like, wow.
Hopefully she's back. Maybe she's not dead. Maybe Gideon is not dead. Who knows?
Maybe. We'll see, I guess.
Man, if you go to IMDb, like, and you look at the photos section, it's just full of fucking spoilers. Like, the first 6 photos are just like things I would not want you to know at all.
I usually, when I look for like the summary, I click on IMDb and I blur my vision so that I don't really see, and like I'll put my hand over the pictures. Like, I am really committed to doing this properly.
Good. I'd like to thank everybody before we get out of here for continuing to listen to the show, for continuing to comment on Spotify and leave reviews on Apple Podcast. All of that stuff is very appreciative to our YouTube audience. Thank you so much for watching this preview shorts. Oh, I got to make one of those today. That's a thing that I need to do today.
Oh yeah, that's true.
About doing that. Thank you for leaving comments on the main videos and things like that. We so much appreciate it. It's just it's been very nice to have people respond to it.
Yeah, honestly, like it's I don't know. I've loved so far making this podcast. Like just because I get to spend time with you, which is really great, but also like to see people kind of like flocking to this little podcast, I guess, like just kind of being like, oh, this is really, really cool. Like you found something where somebody just like randomly said, hey, this is a really cool little podcast. Like you guys should be listening to it. And I'm just like, that is so kind. Like, thank you so much for doing that stuff. Like it warms the heart.
Shout out to Messy Mind OK Life on Tumblr for just randomly like putting us on Tumblr in the Hannibal tag. That was so cool. So had to go back and find the screenshot for that. But
and Merry Christmas if you celebrate. By the way,
Merry Christmas if you decide to celebrate. So thank you for all of that. Please tell your friends about the podcast. Go to rudeats.cool for any links that you might want to find us. And that's it. Until the next episode. Yeah. Bon appetit, everybody.
Bon appetit and Merry Christmas if you celebrate. Hi.
She's arrived. Good morning.
I have. I'm so sorry. I should actually like write down this link just because you send me the same one every week and I'm like, I should know this by now.
If it makes you feel any better, I send the same one to Chris every week too, and we record like 2 or 3 times a week. So
okay, you know what, I'm gonna put it down somewhere so that I have it, and then that way I'll be able to just join. I
don't mind sending it. It's easy.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. How are you?
I'm well. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well also. It's Sunday. I'm having coffee. We're going to talk about Hannibal.
Sunday
what else
morning
can I be
Hannibal
asking?
chat. I love it.
I know.
Absolutely love it. Very excited to talk about this
that.
episode.
It's like Sunday brunch, you know?
It is. Yeah. It's Hannibal brunch would be a fun like themed menu. You know, they have jazz brunch, but like let's get rid of that shitty jazz. Put Hannibal in place. Let him orchestrate the place. That's what I'm saying.
Oof. I mean, I think I would have the eggs, but I'm not sure I would have the sausage. You know what I mean?
I would definitely be focused on salad. Is what I would be going for. I would be Freddie Lounds in this moment.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know that I would trust Mads Mikkelsen to serve me food, if I'm being honest. Like just having seen him in this role for so long. Yeah, like if I
know,
like in my daydreams where I get somehow get invited to a dinner party with Mads Mikkelsen and like I don't know Taylor Swift, like I'd be like, salad for me, please.
So do we want to talk about this during the outtakes or during the episode?
Probably during the episode. Yeah, we're burning
cast. All right.
Burning
like
cast.
I have thoughts about this.
I had a fun experience the other day that I wanted to tell you about. It was Autumn's birthday.
Happy birthday, Autumn.
Happy birthday, Autumn. And I had made her take the day off work like weeks before. Because if I didn't like pre-book it, I knew she would like work would creep up and she'd be like, I don't really care. It's my birthday. I'm going to do one conference call or whatever. So I was like, no. You're taking PTO time. You're taking your time off. And then I like completely didn't have any idea what to do. I just had no fucking clue, which is really funny because like there's a TikTok trend right now of like guys planning days and then forgetting about the plans or something. And I was like, well, I didn't plan anything. I just didn't have anything to plan. But I'm looking on TikTok and I see this thing, and it's local to me, which is really weird. I don't get a lot of like local content on TikTok. And it was the Shampoo Bar by King J.
Oh yes.
And
okay.
Like,
yes.
I'm like, this looks, and like the video is 2 people like with these weird light headbands on their forehead and like just looks like getting their hair just like worshipped by some people. And I was like, you know what,
kinky.
This is a way to get into this. This is a fun thing. This is something that she would never do for herself. So and then I felt weird because I was like, well, I've got to go too. So now I'm like piggybacking on her birthday, like I also want my hair worshipped. I think that would be fun. So
it's nice to do things together though. Like it's not the same if she had gone by herself. Like
it would be a little weird if I was like, here's your thing, see you later. Yeah,
exactly. Like, okay, thanks, I guess.
but we spent. So the first thing they do is take a really up close picture of your scalp. And we both speculated that they were looking for lice because it's, like a zoomed in picture of your scalp. The website says they're just looking for like the quality of your scalp or whatever. Like, do they want to put like extra treatment or something on it? I think they were looking for lice to protect themselves. Just knowing,
which, like, thanks, right? Like, you don't 100%, want to know.
Yes, yeah, 100%.
Like, people with lice have gotten their hair washed before you. You know,
like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then they like soak your feet in like a herbal tea or some shit.
Oh.
And then they lay you down and
so it's like double-ended treatment, the hair and the feet.
They had packages, and I took the King. I couldn't have resisted the King J package, right? Like, there's just no way I'm not getting the King J package. You call something King J on your menu, I'm probably going to order it. I'm just saying, you got me.
Okay.
So yeah, they did the feet, and then they laid us down, and then they spent. I thought this was going to be like a 45-minute thing, and about 45 minutes into it, I was like, all right, I do not want my hair worshipped this much. I was wrong.
Yeah, I'm done.
This has been going on for a long time. And then like another 45 minutes happened after that.
Wow.
Where they just like continued like to put different products. They did like a little facial thing, lotion. They massaged our like top of our shoulders, all this other stuff. And then like once it's all finished up, like they prop you up and they, put your clothes back on or whatever. And they walk you out and then they like blow dry your hair. Right. I have extremely, it's weird. I used to have extremely thick curly hair, and then I had chemo, and now I have extremely thick, like straight hair, which is very strange.
Oh yeah.
But either way, like it's afro thick. Like it's thick. It's like it's a mass right now. And so I never blow dried. I just like put gel in it and then rock out. And they blow dried my hair, and I'm like probably 4 inches of hair coming out of my top of my fucking head, like just poofed. And it's the softest my hair has ever been in my entire life. I was like, the entire, like for 2 days, I didn't wash it the next day because I was like, I'm holding on to all of these nutrients. Like, I got to have this. I just kept running my fingers through my hair going like, this is luxurious. This is so good. The shampoo bar by King J, highly recommended. If you're in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Oh my God. I mean, I might come to Lafayette, Louisiana just for the King J service.
Right. Absolutely. Sometimes we have Comic Cons. That's also something that people come down for,
right.
I guess. Not really. Not at all.
I'm like, right. Okay. I mean, we have the Montreal Comic Con where I am, so that's pretty cool.
I'm sure your Comic Con is way bigger than the Lafayette Comic Con. Although I guess we did get DJ Qualls, because he mentioned that he was here like last year for that. So my good friend in real life, DJ Qualls.
Yes, exactly. Your good friend, your bestie, right? Like, yes, you guys text, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We've kept
that's
up.
Awesome.
We keep up.
Oh, that's amazing.
I've heard the wedding's going to be quiet, so I haven't seen my invite. But I expect to be at the reception. Maybe not at the service, but probably at the reception for sure.
Yeah, I mean, of course, exactly. Like, that's what happens when besties are besties. Like
100%. Yeah,
there you go.
You've had an exciting weekend.
Yes, we went to Pumpkin Furno. So I know that this episode is supposed to come out like at Christmas time.
Yeah.
But like for us, it's not even Halloween yet.
Yeah.
So we went to Pumpkin Furno, and it's like basically an Upper Canada village where it's okay. Wow. It's basically a little village that has been like either built or preserved to look like one of the early settlements in North America. And it's like a really cute area, problematic due to its theme, but hey, that is part of Canada's history, so we do have to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And what they do is that every year at around Halloween time, they build up all of these decorations made out of like fake pumpkins that are decorated, and it's huge installations basically. And now there's like music and stuff and lights, wow. And it's like a big thing. It started off as like a really small thing, and now it's huge. And so we went there and we walked around, and it was great. And I had pulled pork poutine, and I regretted it for the rest of the evening.
I know what all of those words are, and I want them in a bowl in front of me right now. Hell yeah.
I know, right?
Pulled pork poutine.
So good. It's, for those who might not know, poutine is basically like gravy fries, right? I think you guys would call it that, but it has also like cheese curds. Yeah, so it's like the fries, the cheese curds, and then like the gravy on top. And it is like truly one of the most delicious things in the world.
We have stolen that. I'm sure probably nationwide, but especially here in the South, I noticed like probably 10 years ago, all of a sudden, all of our favorite like drinky bar / restaurant, like gastropub kind of situations, all of a sudden had poutine on the menu. So
that's
like,
awesome.
Yeah. So you can get like gravy fries, and then they like, they try to like put some Cajun on it, so you'll get like, crawfish Cajun fries or whatever.
Oh,
it's like, okay.
Wow.
I like mine with like pulled pork or beef though. I don't like seafood and fries are a weird combination for me. So.
Yeah, I can imagine that. That's a bit weird, especially with the gravy. Like it's usually it's like a beef gravy, like, so it's just, it's a lot. I like a regular poutine usually. Like I'm very like, I'm a purist. I like just the regular gravy, the like melty cheese and whatnot. But there they have this pulled pork thing where they top it with pulled pork. And I'm just like, I have to have it every year. And every year I get severely sick midway through.
Oh no, it's worth it though. It's worth it to do it.
But it's so worth it. I do it every year, and I usually go with the same people, right? So my son has a best friend. They've been best friends since they were probably like 2 years old or something. They went to daycare together. And so I became friends with the boys' parents. And we go every year with the same people. And this year, like the dad looks at me and he goes, "Are you going to have the pulled pork poutine again?" And I'm like, "You betcha."
You know it.
Of course. He's like, "Okay, we'll do a second round so that you're fine for the car." They know me. It's like, we're besties now also.
That's awesome. That's so good. Once a year is fine, cool. I think. Like I feel the same purest energy about pizza though. Where pizza to me
too, to be honest.
Is just pepperoni and cheese. Like I don't the more stuff that you put on a pizza, like, and I don't, it's not even like, oh, you should put pineapple on a pizza or anything like that. Like it's not that. I just don't think that like any other pizza should really exist. Like, it's not even pineapples. Like if I say I want a slice of pizza, I'm looking for a slice of pepperoni New York style, period. That's like the ultimate pizza for me.
Interesting. That's very cool. I like a classic margarita, I have to say. Like just with the cheese, the sauce, and a little bit basil. Like that's my go-to. But if I'm going to like quote unquote North American pizza thing, I agree with you. For me, it's just a regular all dressed or pepperoni. Yeah. That's usually what I'll go for.
And like, not to say that other pizzas aren't good, right? Like a margherita pizza is delicious, and like I've definitely had other types of pizza before where I was like, this is good. There's a thing where people, and I feel like this is across the food industry, where it's a more is more kind of mentality, where like all of a sudden you have to have like two hands to pick up a slice of pizza because there's so much crap on it, and I'm just like, I
agree.
I see this when they put like really really liquidy sauces on sandwiches too, of like, let's just pour some ranch over this sandwich, and I'm like, I just. Like I can accept a dip, but like now you've just made this whole situation just awful to eat. Like I'm just not here for it.
You can accept a dip. Yes. Is what you're saying, but you draw the line.
I'm drawing the line.
Drenching.
Yeah, I don't like a drench, or like like a fried chicken patty, and then like a hamburger, and then like I'm like, what? Why all these foods at one time? What are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think. I blame, what was it called, that YouTube series with the Harley guy who like made like crazy insane sandwiches.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Epic Mealtime. Do you know that this guy, that I knew this guy, like he was part of my extended circle of friends? Yes, yeah. Like I knew him before he was the Epic Meal guy. Which is very weird.
Your 6 degrees of separation is really interesting because don't you like know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody from the Our Flag Means Death show? That one dude.
Yes, I do actually.
Yeah. I could beep that out if that's not appropriate. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. You can keep it. It's just I've been keeping it Well, especially while the show was airing, because I just didn't want like anybody to be like, "Oh my god!" And you know how people can get sometimes. So I was just trying to keep it quiet. But now that the show is over, no. Now that the show is over, like it's fine. But yes, I do know somebody who knows Con O'Neill, which is weird, but it's there.
Autumn's mom did like Hollywood stuff,
cool.
but low tier Hollywood stuff. Since she was always trying to be an actor or an actress. In fact, when they were casting Claudia for the original Interview with the Vampire movie, they did it in New Orleans, and her mom was like, "Autumn, we're gonna make you audition," and she's like,
"Oh my god!"
And Autumn was like, "Absolutely not! Like, I do not want to do this." And I think she would have killed it. I think she would have been better than Drew Barrymore, but that's just me. Or Kristen Bell, not Kristen Bell. Drew Barrymore?
Kristen Dunst.
I know.
Right?
It was one of those tiny blonde ladies that are in Hollywood. I knew it was one of them. But so like she knew a director because she was had a bit part in a Steven Soderbergh movie, I think.
Oh, cool.
So, like, if we do 6 degrees...
That's not, like, low-grade Hollywood stuff.
No,
like, Steven Soderbergh, that's, like, that's cool. Like,
he did a movie in, like, South Louisiana, and her and the... I shouldn't be talking so much shit about Autumn's family. Her partner... I was about to say a bunch of, like, real stuff. Her and her partner, I think, had either bit parts or he supplied, like, some vehicles for it, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So like they knew that dude, and I think went to Hollywood to try to like leverage those, and that didn't happen for anybody. But like just because she knows Steven Soderbergh, like if I feel like I am probably 5 degrees away from every single actor in Hollywood that's ever met Steven Soderbergh.
Absolutely, right? You are, yeah.
You can connect me to Kevin Bacon. I'm sure that those two guys have met. So.
I mean, that's the whole point. Kevin Bacon is connected to everybody. Right?
Everything.
That's the whole point.
He's Jesus.
Oh my god!
As in the MCU. So.
In the MCU, of course. Yes, definitely.
Did you watch? I know you and your son are going through the Marvel Universe stuff.
We took a very long break this summer, but yes, we are very slowly going through all of them.
There's one that's easy to overlook called it's a Christmas special on the Guardians of the Galaxy.
We saw that.
You saw that one, yeah.
With Kevin Bacon. Yes.
I hated it. I despised it so much. As soon as that fucking band started playing, like the old 97s or whatever, I was like, this is not for me. This is for a different person. I don't like any of what is happening. I'm going to hate finish this. Like I don't.
So funny thing is that like Guardians, I don't love Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Like I have a complicated relationship with it because it's objectively good, but I don't like it. You know what I mean? And so when my son decided that he wanted to watch this Christmas special, and I think Rochelle and her spouse were there actually, so we watched it all together. I was like, ugh, okay, fine, like this is gonna suck. And my expectations were so low that I laughed through all of it. Like I was just so tickled by this Christmas special. I would probably never watch it again, but it was such an enjoyable experience. It was weird.
That's interesting.
I understand why you wouldn't have liked it because it was objectively bad.
We talked about it on Days of Future Cast, and my co-host Gary, I thought he was going to be like, because he's a renowned hater, and I was like, this dude is going, and he was like, no, actually, like he kind of said the same thing. Like his expectations were so low that he was like, I kind of was like pleasantly on a ride throughout the whole thing. Like it's not something that I would ever like want to return to. It doesn't really have any depth or really anything going on with the characters. Although they do like reveal a big thing about, Peter Quill in that movie that seems important, but whatever.
Well, it's kind of funny, I think, because like this little special is just so, I don't even know how to say this, but it's like so bad that it's enjoyable.
Oh, absolutely. And it loops around.
It doesn't pretend. Yes, it loops around. And it doesn't pretend to be anything else. It's made without pretension. And I do appreciate that, especially because I find that Guardians of the Galaxy is like trying to be something that it's not. Whereas like this Christmas special was exactly what I thought Guardians of the Galaxy ought to have been.
Interesting.
If that makes any sense.
I wonder, are you much of a DC person?
Like not at all.
Superman,
actually.
Batman, anything like that? Nope. Because, that dude that did all the Guardians movies is now like in charge of the entire DC universe. And so like, he's planning all of the movies and TV shows and games and cartoons,
Wow.
and like they're organizing all of this stuff into a big MCU. Like, they're trying their hand again at trying to do an MCU, and I'll be kind of fascinated because I think Guardians 1, like at the time, was really, really good. I think every time I've revisited it, I've liked it less and less and less. Like I just keep going back to it.
Man.
Like it's really funny the first time, and then you realize like, oh, this is okay. I see what they're doing. And then
it tries to be something that it's not.
Yeah,
I think.
And then, man, the third one is just like, oh, you wanted to cry? We can make you cry in a superhero movie. Oof.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. We haven't gotten to that one yet.
I will.
But I've received warnings from you and from Rochelle about how, we might have to wait a little bit with. I guess now 11-year-old.
11-year-old might be it might be a little much for 11-year-old. So is the second Doctor Strange movie, for that matter.
Really?
That's a PG-13 movie that is probably the closest that Marvel has made to an R movie. Like there's some pretty for a PG-13 movie, there's some pretty like rough body horror stuff in there that you would not expect. Yeah, and it's the same Raimi joint. Like it's the guy that made body horror, right? Like it's that dude. Exactly. But also it's just like, oh, here's a Doctor Strange movie. Like our friend Judy, who helps me with all the videos, she brought her, I think, niece to it. It was like, whoops, I should have gone to a website before I did this.
I should have gone to a website. Oh yeah, sometimes, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, but I think, yeah, it's Sam Raimi. What do you want?
Yeah, it's like, you kind of have to know. Has there been something that you've allowed your son to watch and then regretted it later? Because I know you keep a pretty careful eye on pretty much anything that he's consuming.
I mean, he watches. Yes, yeah. So he has like parental controls on, and they're pretty like strict, to be honest. And it's in part because I know that he, like me, tends to have nightmares. And when we watched together the third Harry Potter movie the first time, he had nightmares about werewolves for years after it. And
wow, really?
Yeah. Yep. He was clearly just too young to understand. Like that, and that was, I guess, like the one thing that I really regretted. And since then, like I've taken drastic measures. But whenever we watch movies, we always talk about like special effects and how it works and like how the actors are fine. And so we talk about the behind the scenes a lot so that he can understand like that what he's watching isn't real, right? It's for entertainment. And that also sometimes like plot lines are making characters do things that are wrong or that they shouldn't be doing or that they wouldn't be doing in real life kind of thing. So there's a lot of like media savviness that goes into like our watching sessions just because of who I am.
Yeah, such an learned 11-year-old. He's going to be talking about like, you know, media appreciation when he's 15. Like just having this like,
for sure.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah,
I mean, it's funny because I think like if I had to say like something that I think he would do a really good job at, like as an adult, I always say that he would be amazing at scoring movies. Like, and so there's a part of me that's like, this boy is going to work in movies one day. And so I have to prepare him for this. That is my job as a parent. And I might be entirely wrong, but I just have like this like conviction inside of me that at some point he is going to work in movies, and I don't know why.
You got to drop his letterbox. You got to give him a letterbox. What's his top 4? My
you were going to say something.
Just my parents and especially my grandmother, who I lived with for the first several years of my life, was very, very permissive with me. Like,
right.
She would take me to the local, like, you know, rental store. Wasn't even a Blockbuster. It was just like in the back of a you know, convenience store kind of situation.
Actually, we had one of those where my grandmother lived too, and that was like the best. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Did they have like the little Velcro like numbers, like things that you would take and then you would bring it to the counter and then then they would give you the video?
No, they would cut up like one cover that the VHS tape came through, and then they would put that in like a plastic thing so it didn't get messed up, I guess. And then like you would take that to get a copy of the movie.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, she would let me, like, I would go and get, like, all of the horror movies I ever wanted. And she would buy me all the comic books I ever wanted. Like, she was really permissive when it came to media. And I watched a lot of, like, the stuff that they watched, which was, you know, obviously just TV and things like that, but also, like, comedians and stuff that probably, maybe as, like, an 8, 9, 10-year-old, I probably would shy away from. But she was always real big on, like, do you know, can you know that this is all fiction, right? Like with comic books, especially, she was like, you know, this isn't real. You know, you can't do this. And I was like, yes, Mama, I know the difference between fiction and fact. I really found it fascinating that you guys talk about, like, behind the scenes stuff in movies and, like, how things were made to kind of emphasize that separation of fiction and reality. Though that's it makes me wish that, like, we still had access to a lot of, like, behind the scenes material that came on DVDs and things.
I know. And that's what I realize, is that he loves behind the scenes videos. So, like, whenever there is anything like iTunes extras or whatever, like, he's always watching them. And even for, like, animation, he loves watching how animation is made. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
He's a cool guy. He's a cool dude. I like this little.
You like the little dude. Little 11-year-old is pretty good. Yeah, I'm making a good one.
You know?
Yeah,
I know.
I'm doing a good job.
Tell people, I'm doing a good job. I always tell people, I'm like, I'm a one-hit wonder. You know, like
absolutely. Yeah.
That's what it is.
This is it. I got this good one, and the next one is going to be terrible. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, that's the thing, right? So. That's the joke with me and my sister, actually. I was like, you know, they did a good job with me. And she's like, no, you were the test. You were the test one. And then they perfected the art and they got me.
There you go. Perfect. I was the eldest, so I got, of course, my family's so weird. Like, we were all raised by different parents, basically, like in different households and things like that. So it's really hard to compare, like, one treatment to the next.
I mean, same, actually. But that happened, like, later on in life, like, because, well, let's not go into that. But yeah, we later found out about certain things. Yeah.
Families. Yeah. I was definitely a planned and wanted child. That's the joke that I always make. Definitely planned and wanted. Definitely two, 20-year-old kids on their junior year of college. Definitely planned and wanted kid. So.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, my son wasn't planned, but he was definitely wanted, you know?
Oh, yeah, it's a rough chuckle. Like, I'm not, it's just mostly that I just like the not even the alliteration, but the rhythm of the joke more than anything. I think I was definitely exactly. Like, once I was there, I was wanted.
Yes. I get
I think probably there was probably a period of several weeks, 2 months where they were like,
Are we sure?
Man, it's so weird. I don't know if I talked about this on a podcast, but I was at my uncle's funeral, and a woman approaches me and is like, "You don't remember who I am?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that no, I don't. Like, this happens all the time at funerals." And she said she was my mom's roommate. My mom's been dead for, like, close to 10 years now, right? So I don't really, and we don't have, like, a lot of photos. We don't have a lot of, like, historical information from her. Like, we've been through a couple of house fires. So, like, I just don't have, like, I have no pictures of my mom before probably the mid 80s, right? And she describes, she's like, "Oh, I was your mother's roommate. Like, I was there when you were born. I helped babysit you so she could go to class and work." And I was like, "Who the fuck are you?" And she's like, "I have these Polaroids. Like, you should see them." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." And, like, just pictures of my mom in, like, 1981 or something, like, crazy. Just a really weird thing that happens. Like, oh yeah. And so I'm, like, texting my sisters these pictures, and they're like, "Where did you get this?"
Yeah. That's amazing. I think it's always nice. You know, a lot of the pictures, see, that's the thing. When you take pictures and when you're able to see those things, and, like, in your case, because of the fact that your mom's been, like, passed for so long, like, meeting this person, like, hopefully, like, that was always my hope when I was taking pictures for my son, to see later on that he would know that he was loved, you know? And, like, I hope that made you feel, like, loved when you saw this.
Oh yeah, it was a very wholesome moment, right? Because, again, I didn't know who this person was, and to know that like, and I didn't know, like, the struggle, like the history that I know is just, like, stories from that people have told me. Obviously, I don't remember when I was 0 years old, but I was always told that, like, they couldn't handle, like, because they were in college, they couldn't handle like a newborn baby, so I went and lived with my grandmother for 5 years, where obviously like now I know there was a period of time where like she was really trying, like she was trying to go to school and trying to work and also take care of me with the help of her roommates. Like, it just adds more to the history, like fleshes her out as a person. So just really kind of crazy, like when you meet people who knew other people. So
yeah, seriously. Oh my god, that got really deep for like an update to a podcast.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. No, it's fine.
I go to therapy on Friday, so I just need to hold all the stories then for this.
No, it's totally fine. But yeah, like, I don't know. I just, to me, what I'm hearing is like a story of love. And I just hope that that's what you took from it. Cause like, it's actually quite beautiful to know that like your mom tried so hard, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like she would, and you know, when I did live with her and she was a single mom and all that stuff, she absolutely was doing the most, right? Like, I mean, I remember her pregnant with my sister, taking care of the house, working, and then like would drive to night school from like where she lived to another town that was like 2 hours away so she could get her x-ray degree. And like just crazy, like that's a crazy single mom thing to do. Like that's a lot of work. So anyway, we should talk about murder husbands now, because
we should talk about murder husbands. I'm so excited.
Are you already planning? Like, what's your Sunday look like? Let's get into it. Let's get into it for a second. Let's get into the episode.
Okay. All right. Cool. Before we do that, I'm just going to go get some more coffee and I will be right back, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Is she making coffee or is she just beating the coffee up in there? I don't know if you guys can hear the sounds that she's making. Oh, well, Mary can still hear me, which makes this outtake a lot less fun. I don't know how that works.
It's because I have my wireless headphones on, and so like, I took you with me, but my microphone is like not. And I also live like in an open concept, like 2-bedroom apartment, right? So like my quote unquote recording studio is in my living room, which is right next to my kitchen. And so like, I don't have far to go to get a refill of coffee. Okay. I'm good.
Okay.